There is an apology from Councillor Griffith.
Is he an apology or is he requesting to attend remotely? An apology. Is that carried? The notice of webcasting for the benefit of the citizens who are attending tonight and are speaking in the public gallery. We let you know at the start of the meeting that these proceedings, as is required by the Local Government Act, are broadcast live onto YouTube and recorded there for posterity. And so the comments that you make tonight do have legal ramifications. Statement of ethical obligations. I'll now read that. The Mayor and Councillors are bound by the oath or affirmation of office made at the start of the Council term to undertake their civic duties in the best interests of the people of the Inner West Council and to faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in them under the Local Government Act or any other act to the best of their skill and judgment. It is also a requirement that the Mayor and Councillors disclose conflicts of interest in relation to items listed for consideration on the agenda or which are considered at this meeting in accordance with the Council's Code of Conduct and Code of Meeting Practice. I'll now move on to disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures tonight, Councillors? Councillor Atkins?
Yes, I'd like to disclose a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in item 5, the 2024 Inner West Council grant. I'm a member of the Older Women's Network, which is a grant recipient. I'm not an office bearer and not a decision maker, so I'm.
Thank you for that. Councillor Howard?
Thank you. I declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in items 9 and 13, the local traffic committee meeting minutes, as I work with the Ministerial Office of the Minister of Transport, who in her capacity as a member of the Commonwealth has a representative on that committee. I'll remain in the meeting during discussion and voting as the vote of the state member is exercised through a representative. I declare a significant pecuniary interest in item 18 in the West Cycling Update, as my primary residence is located on one of the streets where works are being discussed. I will leave the chamber for discussion and voting. I declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in item 19, pathway to safe river walking and cycling trails, as I work in the Office of Transport. This item references disclosure of 53 Bankstown lines that does not substantially regard that matter, and as such, I do not believe it constitutes a conflict, so I'll remain in discussion and voting. I declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in items 36 and 39, Minimisation and Lewisham Town Centre, as again I work in the Office of Transport. In that capacity, I have been directly engaged in work around station upgrades. Out of an abundance of caution to avoid any perception of risk, I will remove myself from discussion or voting on the item. For the last one of this term, I declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in item 15, Three-Quarter Park lease to the Transport for New South Wales, because as everyone knows, I work in the Office of the Transport, as this is a legal matter that involves Transport for New South Wales. Out of an abundance of caution, so as to avoid any perception of risk, I will remove myself from discussion and voting on that matter.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. I declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in item 9, traffic committee meetings, particularly the June 1, as my principal place of residence is within the traditional LAPM planned precinct. I will remain in the chamber for this item as the conflict is such that it will not influence me in carrying out my position.
Thank you for that. Councillor Shetty?
I'd like to declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in item 9 and item 13, the local traffic committee meetings. I, in my capacity as a member of Balmain, have a representative on the local traffic committee, but I will remain in the meeting and vote on the item.
Thank you for that. I will also make a declaration, as I am the Inner West Council's nominated representative on the Callan Park Community Trustee Board. I note that clause 4.6 of the Code of Conduct provides that an interest arising from an appointment of a councillor to a body as a representative or delegate of the council, whether or not a fee or recompense is payable, and it's not in this case, does not need to be disclosed. As such, I will remain in the meeting for this item, for item 1 and item 44. Are there any further disclosures, Councillor Stamoulis?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to declare that I'm a member of the Friends of Callan Park, so when voting on those two items this evening, item 1, as I'm a member of the Friends of Callan Park,
Thank you for that. Any further declarations? If not, will someone move their acceptance? Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Langford. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Could I ask everyone to please join me in a moment of quiet contemplation? All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried.
Mr. Mayor, could I please move a procedural motion?
Yes, you can.
Could I please move a procedural motion to give notice of an urgency motion, inclusion of LGBTQIA plus people in the census on behalf of myself and Councillor Carney.
Yes.
And may I ask for your permission if I may read that urgency motion now?
I'll note that the urgency motion can be dealt with after we have completed the tabled business of the meeting, but the code of meeting practice also allows for the motion to be read now. If you would do so.
Yes, thank you. So the urgency motion is moved in the name of both myself and Councillor D'Arienzo, and it is as such. Acknowledges the Count Us In campaign by Equality Australia and others, seeking for the 2026 Australian Census to include questions on sexual orientation, gender identity, and variation in sex characteristics. 3. Supports the Commonwealth Government's decision to yes the question on diverse sexuality and inclusion in the Census. 4. Calls on the Commonwealth Government to also include questions on gender identity and variation in sex characteristics, to provide the clearest data possible on LGBTQIA plus communities across Australia, including the US. And 5. Ask the General Manager to write to the Assistant Minister for Competition, Charity and Treasury and the Assistant Minister for Employment, the Honourable Andrew Lee MP, to convey this motion.
Thanks very much, Councillor Howard. I'm not sure if that actually requires a procedural motion at this point. You've flagged the fact that you'll be tabling an urgency motion, and that has been noted by the meeting. I'll move on to the public forum, for which we have 2 items that have registered speakers. The first is item 46, notice of motion, licence arrangements in parks. And the second is item 47, notice of motion, temporary use of Hoskins Park and Laxton Reserve as off-leash. For the first item, item 46, the first speaker is Tom Patterson of Newtown, who is in person. Tom, are you here? Thank you. Just to let you know, and the other 3 speakers who are registered tonight, the code of meeting practice allows for you to speak for 3 minutes. After 2.5 minutes, you'll hear the following bell, and that's an indication that it's time to work up to your crescendo. We're not in the practice of extending time. At the last meeting, we got through 2 items, so we're pretty keen to get through all the business tonight, and I personally won't be supporting any extensions of time for the 4 speakers that we have. Over to you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So I'm lucky enough to live adjacent to Camperdown Memorial Rest Park, and recently I learnt that the park was leased to part of the park was leased to a private enterprise for their own personal use. And I found out about this through a notification letter that stated that building materials were being delivered to commence construction. The site of the lease is the place where I frequently play with my children. It is where I held my son's first birthday party. Lots of different groups use this area: soccer, Tai Chi, or just to meet with friends. I would prefer that any changes to Camperdown Memorial Rest Park are undertaken with transparency and community consultation. that the process be fair, in that if the community decides not to give part of the park to private use, this view is respected, and that any changes are considered in the context of future use of the park. I think we've all seen the sort of the outpouring of anger and confusion about this over the last couple of weeks, the last week or so. And what I think it is, it's just that everyone's love of this place. I'd like that to be considered and respected. So I'd like to support both motion 46 and motion 49.
Thanks very much for that, Tom. The second speaker is Amy Gray of Newtown, who is online. Amy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
I am lucky enough to be Mr. Patterson's next door neighbor, so I also back. I'd like to talk today about council's responsibility for making decisions about parklands, and the specific responsibility to make those decisions for the benefit of residents of the state of Parklands. If I had more time, I would speak to the New South Wales government's values of trust, integrity, and accountability, all of which are very well served by extensive public consultation anytime the council is considering whether to enter into commercial agreements and arrangements at parklands. I think all of those, they're all very well. But instead of focusing on those sort of more theoretical principles, I'd like to talk about the three categories of information that I think council should want to have for it to provide us move forward with the types of arrangements that have been contemplated with this restaurant, and that they can only get through public. So the first of those three categories is resident attitude towards commercialization of our public parks for the purposes of serving food and drink only to the people who can afford those food and drink. I think that's particularly a concern in a suburb like Newtown that has a large amount of excellent food and drink establishments all around the park. It's not interfere with the public's ability to enjoy our limited green space. I think that's probably the most important consideration. But secondly, another piece of information that council should consider is whether or not there's any need to activate part of the park where Commodore restaurants would like to rest. Now, the only way that council could really have all of that information about how that is being used without is to engage in extensive monitoring of the park, determine what happens on a day-to-day basis. Or council could just ask the public how they use the park. If I were asked, I would say that my children play soccer and frisbee every single weekend. In the summer, they have water sports that they couldn't have anywhere else because they don't. Next to death, they thought it was the best spot for birthday parties on a gorgeous Saturday afternoon. All of that sort of information would not be available without the public say. Without the consultation, the council also will not know what sort of interactions the public has had with the residents, which I think indicates the residents' attitude towards the public and whether the rules apply to the restaurant or not. Council may know of the numerous noise complaints that have been made against the restaurant, flash machinery on the top of the restaurant. They know of the restaurant's failure to comply with the waste provision of the DA. One thing that council will not know without asking me.
Amy, your time has expired. I'll ask you to conclude.
Okay. Is that the owner of the restaurant has to be on the street and threaten to report us because he knows that is. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Amy. For item 47, the first speaker is Deirdre O'Sullivan of Dulwich Hill, who is online. Deirdre, are you there? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can now, yep.
Yeah, there are two of us wanting to speak for the alternative offers park in Dulwich Hill. The other person wanted to speak first. He's the longer term member. However, you've given me the opportunity, so as everyone knows, Johnson Park is going to be closed totally from November to May 2025 and possibly longer. So the dog community in Johnson Park won't have anywhere to go in walking distance. There's a lot of older people who come to that park for either morning or evening or both, 5, 7 days a week. And they don't really have somewhere else they can walk to. So, and because of the overuse of cars as another issue, and because of the strength of that community, which I'm a new member of, I've only been in it for a year with a new dog, we'd like an alternative hours in Lewisham Park from 7 to 9 a.m. in the morning and 4 to 8 p.m. in the evening, if possible, 5 days or 7 days a week. We realise that Lewisham Park is used a lot by family picnics at the weekend, but those hours don't interfere with that too much, and possibly a temporary fence could be put up for the playground areas so the kids aren't disturbed by dogs. The community is very strong, as I understand it. It's been going for a long time and developed a very close ties during COVID, where that was the area that people had a free time to walk around. There's a lot. We've had a petition. We have over 185 signatures without it even being put on a QR code in the park because they haven't had time to print it. So I think that indicates the strong support every day. As we know, there's 35,000 dogs in the inner west. I think there's a huge number in Dulwich Hill of those 35,000. And not only that, there's all the apartment blocks keep opening up and all the people have dogs and they want to walk their dogs, and they work all day. I mean, I'm a retired person and there's retired people who use it, but people who work or work from home, those crucial hours in the morning and afternoon are when they can give their dog a little run and meet with their dog friends and also the community meet. So we don't want to lose that community. I'd like to point out that Constitution Road has suffered, we put up with 5 months of the road being closed. There's now detours around Davis Street. So if roads are provided with detours and people inconvenienced, we think that dog owners and dog walkers need to be considered in a positive way, not just by people who don't like them, because there are so many dogs and it creates such a strong sense of community. I've got to know so many people.
Deirdre, your time has expired.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Our last speaker is Penny Stringer of Dulwich Hill, who's also online. Penny, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for having me today. I support the motion for some temporary use of Laxton's and Hoxton's Park for off-lead dog area. Everything Deirdre has said is extremely true. There is a very large dog community within Dulwich Hill that use the park not only to socialise, walk, exercise their dogs, but also as their touch points for socialisation themselves. It grew mainly out of COVID, but that continues. We also have many elderly people who are part of that community who don't have cars, because living in Dulwich Hill, you don't need a car, and the inner west, which is one of the great things we love about it. And therefore the offer that the council did was to tell us that Mahoney was available in Marrickville, which was a 5-minute drive, but if you don't have a car, that's a 20-minute walk. And for a number of the elderly people within our dog park community, that is not a feasible option for them. The Laxton and Hoskins parks are feasible options. They can be looked at different times. I have noticed, though, that now Johnson is half closed. Some of the people are walking their dogs on the street. We would not have a massive group of people who would be using these locations. And so previous people who may have complained about the use of these as off-lead locations for dogs, I think would find that it would not be as large a number as it has been in the past. We understand the benefits that are coming from the works at Johnson Park and the Greenway, and we appreciate that. But to lose this community for potentially a 12-month period would be extremely detrimental to a number of people's mental health and to our own dogs' ability to socialise and be within our community. I'd also note that we really wouldn't want to add to any more environmental issues by using cars to access other dog parks. And also the congestion within the inner west is quite large, and we don't want to add to morning congestion or afternoon congestion by driving our dogs to dog parks. So we would appreciate you to review and look at this motion.
Thanks very much, Penny. That concludes the public gallery. We'll now move on to the business of the council meeting. Is there any procedural there's no condolence motions and no mayoral minutes. Is there any procedural motion? Sorry?
No, Mr Mayor, there is one condolence motion.
Sorry, Councillor Sardoulias. Proceed.
Okay. This condolence motion is for the late Carol Carney. It's for the Inner West Council to record our sadness of the passing of Carol Carney and write to the family expressing our condolences. Carol Ann Carney passed away on August the 23rd, 2024, leaving behind a legacy of dedication and compassion. Carol was truly an unsung hero. For over 9 years, she was a devoted member of the New South Wales State Emergency Service Marrickville Unit. However, her commitment went far beyond those years. For more than 26 years, she stood steadfastly by the side of the unit commander, Michael Carney, offering unwavering support. Carol had a remarkable ability to make the Marrickville unit feel like a true home. Her thoughtful contributions and caring presence left a lasting imprint, creating an environment where every member felt welcomed and valued. The impact of her efforts are still evident in the small touches around the unit that bear her mark. She was a constant source of inspiration for Michael, always encouraging him to strive for better and to find ways to benefit the community. Her support extended beyond the unit, motivating Michael to join the Inner West Council Senior Working Group, ensuring that the voices of her friends from the former Tom Foster Seniors Group were heard. Even while in the nursing home, Carol's spirit of encouragement never wavered. She would urge Michael to continue his service to the community, which now includes his role as the local commander for the New South Wales SES Inner West Cluster, overseeing units in Ashfield, Leichhardt, Burwood, Canada Bay, and Strathfield. My memories of Carol will always be pleasant. Carol and Mick were my favourite customers at Steel Park. We would share stories about SES, our little orange family where Mick and Emmanuel were heavily involved. Such a polite, kind and graceful lady. Carol Carney's legacy of service, love and dedication to the Marrickville and Inner West communities will always be remembered with ample respect and affection. Vale Carol Carney, your legacy and contribution to the Marrickville community will always be remembered.
Thank you, Councillor Sardoulias. Well said. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the condolence motion? Councillor Howard, will you second it?
Yes, thank you. I too just want to pass on my deep condolences to Michael Carney and to the Marrickville SES unit. Carol was a really extraordinary and formidable woman, and I had so many fond memories of being on Marrickville Road or Illawarra Road and her coming up and calling up saying, "Matt, how's it going? How are the kids?" And then listing a series of things she thought we could all work on together to improve the local community. She was just like that. She remembered everybody's names. She was a person who was a deep appreciator of our local community and who brought people together. And she made people feel special. And she understood at its very core what it means to be a volunteer, what that civic call is, and made everyone, no matter how big or small their contribution be, feel like they had just lent in and made the biggest difference to Marrickville in the world. And I think amongst all of that, she spent so much effort to make you feel big that it could be easy to diminish her own contribution. She and Michael have just made such an extraordinary contribution to Marrickville SES and to the whole local community, and we won't forget her. So, Vale Carol, and my deep condolences to Michael and the SES.
Thanks, Councillor Howard. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously.
Mr Mayor?
Yes, just one moment. There are no mayoral minutes. I just, before we get on with the general business, want to take one moment to make an important remark. On behalf of the elected representatives at the last meeting of the council term, I want to express the thanks and gratitude of all of us to the council officers, the executive, all of the staff at the council for the very dedicated contribution that they have made over the last 2 years and 9 months. I believe that the council officers have performed better and more diligently in this term of council than any other time that I've experienced, and the relationship between the elected representatives and the council staff has been respectful and highly effective, and I want to state for the public record how grateful we all are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like the opportunity to say a couple of words. On behalf of the staff, I'd like to thank all the councillors for your time this term of council. It's a significant commitment that you make being an elected representative to the Inner West Council, and I wanted to thank all of you for your efforts over the term of council. To the outgoing councillors, I want to thank you for your service, and particularly the ones that have been here since almost the start of Inner West, Margarita, Pauline and Mark. Thank you for your efforts for helping shape the Inner West Council. For the rest of the councillors, I just wish you all the best over the next few weeks. So thank you on behalf of staff.
Thanks very much, Peter. Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I'm so sorry to have interrupted or overstepped on that really nice sentiment. Thank you for expressing that on behalf of the councillors. I have a procedural motion to move a number of items in globo. I thank Councillor Atkins for helping to develop this list, and I understand that Councillor Atkins is going to second this motion. They are before you. It is an extensive list, and I'd ask for your assistance in reading it out for the councillors.
Okay. So those items are now tabled on the screen. It is a very extensive list. That's great. So can I just ask the minute takers to try to format that so we can see the whole thing on the screen? We just need to reduce the font size. Thank you very much. So, as we all know, I'm going to read through the list. If any councillor chooses to object to an item being dealt with en bloc, then it will be removed, but presumably after the deliberation between Councillor Atkins and Councillor Scott, there won't be any Greens or Labor councillors who will object to any of the items. Item 3, post-exhibition naming policy. Item 6, Lunar New Year 2025. Item 7, Arts and Music Recovery Plan. Item 10, Customer Service in Development Assessments. Item 12, Direct Employment of People with a Disability. Item 13, Local Traffic Committee 19 August. Item 15, Quarter 4. Were you able to discuss that with Councillor Atkins before the meeting? Could you turn your microphone on, please, Councillor?
Yeah, we discussed it with Councillor Atkins, and we presume Councillor Atkins told Councillor Scott.
I don't think that was the case, but hopefully there aren't further miscommunications.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? There are some things on this list which I said that we did not want.
Do you want to identify those for us now?
Item 15, item 18 and item 29.
Okay, we'll take all of those out. That's it, is it? I will keep going, but Councillor Atkins is clear on what the items are. So you've tabled 3. Are there further items? Councillor Atkins?
Not from me, no.
Okay. Okay. I just want to pay tribute to Councillor Scott for the work she's done over this entire term in trying to make sure that we get through the business. It hasn't been easy, as is evidenced tonight. So we've removed those 3 items. Sorry, if I can just keep going through the rest of the list. Item 16, investment report. Item 20, rezoning of Leichhardt Bowling Club. Item 21, FOGO monthly update. Item 23, councillor expenses. Item 24, annual disclosures. Item 27, no net dwelling loss rules. Item 30, St Peter's interchange. Item 35, supporting visual artists. Item 36, Tempe train station. Item 37, pedestrian safety on Brighton Street. Item 38, West Street and Railway Terrace. Item 40, pedestrian crossings on Marrickville Road. Item 41, Polly's Club. Item 42, Taxis and Abandoned Vehicles. Item 43, Rubbish in Tempe Reserve. Item 45, Hinsby Park and Piper Street, North and South. Item 47, Temporary use of Hoskins Park and Laxton Reserve as off-leash. Item 48, Livingston Road. Item 54, Major Capital Projects Committee. Item 56, Quarterly Strategic Investment Property Report. And item 57, Appointment of Independent Audit Risk and Improvement Committee members.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, with many apologies, I have to remove 36 due to my conflict of interest. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's removed. Anything further? Okay, thank you for that. So Councillor Scott will move the adoption of those items. Councillor Atkins will second that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Can I ask the council officers to assist me by just providing a list of the items still on the agenda and striking off the items that have now been dealt with? And I believe the first of those is so that has been adopted. And so the first item on the agenda is item 1, draft council submission, Greater Sydney Parklands and Callan Park Plan of Management. Is there anyone who wishes to move the adoption of that? Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Stevens. Does anyone wish to amend it? Councillor Stamoulis.
I have a few things that will appear on screen very shortly.
Can I ask the minute takers to display Councillor Stamoulis's amendments?
The first one is that references to the ownership of, now these are all separate amendments, that any references to the ownership of Callan Park need to be corrected in the submission throughout that submission, noting that 2/3 or 38 hectares of Callan Park is owned and managed by the CPMPT, the Centennial Park and Moore Park Trust, under the guidance of the Callan Park Act. The remaining area outside that is managed by New South Wales Health. So I think there's a few confusing references there as to who is the park manager. Inner West Council, of course, is the Planning Consent Authority. So it'd be good if that document could be checked to ensure that the appropriate terminology and references to ownership are made. That's that amendment.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor De Cruz. Do you wish to speak to it? I'll go to the mover of the motion. Do you wish to incorporate that?
Can I seek advice from the council officers about the proposed amendment, please? It's framed as a correction, but it's the staff submission and I would like some advice.
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Through you, Chair, I can appreciate the clarity and that can be incorporated if the council so wishes.
Okay, thank you for that.
That's fine then.
Incorporated. Councillor Stamoulis, Amendment 2.
Thank you. It's also important that the document doesn't confuse the public about who can approve or change use or remove buildings, whatever it might be that we talk about in relation to Callan Park. And there I'm suggesting that any activity on site must be approved by the Greater Sydney Parklands Authority. It wasn't clear in the submission that that was the case. And again, I would like to make sure that any references to any change of use, any activity that might take place, the authority that can take charge of this and make that in effect would be the GSP. So again, it's seeking that clarity to in terms of our document.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Shetty. Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Scott, do you wish to incorporate that?
Sure.
Happy to. Thank you. Amendment 3.
The third is quite simple. We're in regard to the cycling improvements and opportunities. There's a bullet point there on second last bullet point, I should say, on page 25. That instead of reducing the speed limit to 30k, given the types of use and the parklands itself, we reduced the speed limit to 25k noting that cars, bicycles, scooters, dog walkers, pedestrians use that site. So could we reduce that to 25?
Well, hold on. Your amendment reads that in regard to cycling improvements and opportunities, second last bullet point, page 25, to reduce the speed limit to 25 k's rather than 30 k's, noting that the Callan Park roads are shared between cars, bicycles, scooters, pedestrians, and many dog walkers on site. Can I just ask the council officers for advice about what the substance of the point in the submission is?
Through the chair, so we would typically signpost advisory speeds with a with items such as 25 or 15 kilometers per hour, with a 5 being the end digit. Regulatory speed limits would usually be in a multiple of 10, so 10, 30, 40, and 30 kilometers per hour is in line with our integrated transport strategy for roads with cycling and high pedestrian activity.
Okay. Whilst noting that we're getting right down into micromanagement, I have no objection to that being the amendment being incorporated. Councillor Scott, you happy with that?
That's fine.
That's incorporated. Can I ask? Oh, I'm confused now because the amendments have changed numbers. So is 2 what was previously 4?
You've accepted 1 there, just then.
Yeah, but it was previously 3. Can I ask the minute takers just to leave the amendments as they were on the screen? Okay. Well, they're not numbered now, but that's fine. So the next amendment from Councillor Stamoulis.
Now, I'm asking here that we delete bullet point 7, page 23, which suggests that synthetic sporting services are put on the footprint of buildings which have been demolished. I don't think that there has been any consultation done which would give council with the community that would suggest that council should put that in. Certainly, I would not think that any consultation has been done with GSP or the Heritage Council to allow that to be put in there. And in fact, there are a number of buildings there that are so small that you wouldn't be putting any synthetic surface. You just simply extend the park. And I think the key thing for us is that if buildings are removed, we instead of prioritising synthetic sporting surfaces, we should be prioritising the green and the biodiversity and tree planting, whatever it might be. We shouldn't be suggesting that the priority is to put in synthetic sporting surfaces on the footprint of those buildings. So that's the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor De Cruz, do you wish to speak to it?
No, that's fine, thanks. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
I'll just state in relation to this amendment and the subsequent 2 amendments that I believe Councillor Stamoulis and in fact Councillor Shetty are out of keeping with mainstream public opinion in the Balmain-Balladari ward in regards to all-weather playing surfaces.
Point of order, Mayor. Is editorialising part of your role as the chair?
I'm able to speak to the amendment. I believe that Councillor Stamoulis and Councillor Shetty, both in her role as a councillor and as a state member for Balmain, are out of keeping with mainstream public opinion in regards to all-weather surfaces in Callan Park. And on that basis, I oppose the amendment. I'm sorry, I should have asked Councillor Scott first. Do you wish to incorporate it?
I do not.
Okay, I don't need to speak any further. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the amendment?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it.
Please do.
I'd just like to counter the suggestion that it's not contested. The Greater Sydney Parklands, who are the landowners of Callan Park, have acknowledged that it is a contested issue. And so I think to say that our view that there are people that have concerns about that is disingenuous and misrepresenting us and the public.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That's 6 in favour. All those against? That's 8 against. That has been defeated. We'll move on. Sorry, Mr. Power. You're citing the Lord's name in vain? Yeah. As with the candidates' debate on Saturday, I would ask you to show adult respect and refrain from interjecting. The next amendment from Councillor Stamoulis. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It is very, very important that Council note the high level of community concern and opposition in regard to the installation of synthetic turf in an 1870s historic landscape that has been now listed as one of the 5 iconic parklands of Sydney. There is huge opposition to this. Mr Mayor, as you've done your door knocking and as I've done my door knocking, you know that very well. You know that very well. There is great concern about the impact of 2 massive fields of synthetic turf on this beautiful, unique and rare 1870s landscape. I would expect that in Australia there'd be no more than 4 or 5 of them across the nation. These sorts of landscapes, 4 or 5, and people don't want to see that turned over to synthetic turf. People are happy to have those 5 ovals used for many, many years ahead. Many years ahead, with better maintenance of those fields. I think, and in fact, we know that the GSP will eventually fund those the green space of Callan Park, and in fact, there'll be upgrades to those ovals and the turf there over time. So we'll see that anyway. But people do not want to see synthetic turf within Callan Park. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor De Cruz, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do wish to speak to it. I think not only is there community concern, it's well founded with scientific research that synthetic turf is hotter and destroys the environment, and so I support this motion amendment.
Councillor Scott, do you wish to incorporate the amendment?
I do not. I am not opposed to children's sport, nor do I have great faith in the Liberal-appointed Greater Sydney Parklands.
Thank you very much. I'll speak briefly against the amendment. I believe that Councillor Stamoulis and Councillor Shetty, both in her role as a councillor and a state member for Balmain, on this issue are out of keeping with mainstream public opinion, and I oppose the amendment. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the amendment? Yes, Councillor Shetty.
Yeah, given that I'm continuously invoked, even though I haven't spoken on this item, I feel like I need to speak to it now. I think there's nothing unclear about the fact that there is community concern and opposition. And so although there are members of the community that support the installation of synthetic turf, which I have acknowledged, and I've talked at great length about the need for community consultation, rather than Labor councillors believing that they know better than everybody else, as they have consistently demonstrated throughout this term of council, I think it's really clear that there is a high level of concern and opposition, regardless of whether there are people that also support it. So trying to speak about the fact that we are picking sides or trying to say that there is no opposition, I think it's absolute nonsense. And it's been really disappointing to see this continuous misrepresentation of our opinion, this divisive approach to the way that we deal with issues that there are varied opinions on, rather than trying to come together, work collaboratively and figure out a positive way forward. This polarising, politicising of every single issue where you've got an opportunity for political gain is really frustrating, and I'm quite tired of it.
Here.
I'm going to refrain from moving a point of order at having been misrepresented, because that's Councillor Shetty's job. Sure. Okay, there's no further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour? 6 in favour, all those against? 8 against. That has been defeated. We'll move on to the last amendment from Councillor Stamoulis.
Mr Mayor, it's been very disappointing about the lack of consultation that occurred in regard to creation of this submission. Now listed as one of the 5 iconic parklands of Sydney, one would expect that a council submission would have wanted to engage the wider public. Many important groups were left out, key stakeholders were left out, and in fact some of the things that have been now accepted in this submission are contrary to what large sections of our public would want submitted on their behalf. A submission from council is to express the wishes of all of its community, not just key and specific groups that certain political parties play to. It's got to be on behalf of the wider community. The submission has upset many people who are concerned about the environment, concerned about the landscape, concerned about our heritage, concerned about our biodiversity, all of those fundamental and key aspects of Callan Park. We are so lucky. We are so lucky to have one of the 5 iconic parklands of Sydney sitting inside the inner west, and it is vital that council puts forward a good submission. This is not a good submission, with key elements there trashing Callan Park, showing a lack of respect for Callan Park, and I certainly won't be supporting this document going forward. It does not express the wishes of all of its community, and I'm concerned about the lack of consultation. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Is there a seconder for the motion? Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor De Cruz?
Yes, I do. I'm pleased that Councillor Scott accepted the point about the speed limits. The current speed limits are 25 kilometres an hour in the park, and it was proposed in this submission to make it 30 kilometres. So, I mean, I think there's lots of other mistakes that would have been picked up by a community who know and love the park. And I think the speed limit was an example of the fact that perhaps the officers are not as close to this park as they should have been to prepare such a submission. So I will support this motion, this amendment gladly.
Thank you for that. Councillor Scott, do you wish to incorporate the amendment?
I do not. I do not believe that there is a high level of community concern about this submission. I'd like to reiterate my thanks to the staff for the work that they've put in preparing this. I don't believe that they are not close enough to the park to be able to write the submission. I think they've done a good job. And I'll note that Councillor Shetty has given us both a disappointed and a misrepresented already this evening, so she's hit her bingo card for the last time this term.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wish to ask a question of the council officers in regards to the amendment. Councillor Stamoulis has asserted that this submission is trashing Callan Park, that it shows a lack of respect for the community and a lack of consultation. Councillor De Cruz has asserted that it demonstrates that council officers are not close to the community. Can I just ask the council officers about the preparation of this draft submission, the timeline for it, and how it has been prepared?
Through you, Chair, in terms of how the submission was prepared, it was following a workshop which was held with staff from the Greater Sydney Parklands and Canada Bay Council, and it forms the synthesis of the staff's understanding of the taking forward of a range of council resolutions, as well as based on work that has been done in the past and has formed the basis of earlier submissions.
Thank you for that. And in regards to the timeline, was that a confined timeline? I know this submission was tabled at the last council meeting, that we weren't able to deal with it because of the disruption to the council meeting. What has been the timeline for the preparation of the submission?
Yes, look, the timeline has been constrained. The work was held over until the workshop had been held, which was midway through the consultation period that the Greater Sydney Parkland undertook on their own behalf. And then the submission was delayed in terms of its provision back to the Greater Sydney Parkland so that it could make the council agenda. So notwithstanding the fact that consultation closed on the 30th of June, this submission was finalised some weeks ago, many weeks ago.
Thank you. And did you request of the Greater Sydney Parklands Agency an extension to the deadline so that councillors were able to vote on the submission?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just speak briefly against the amendment. Councillor Stamoulis referenced door knocking. I've done a bit of it myself, and I like to ask people whether they have any concerns that they'd like to raise. And I'll just note that quite a large number of people have raised with me that the concern that they have is that the Friends of Callan Park consider themselves to have proprietary rights over Callan Park. I'll now put the amendment. All those in favour?
Mayor, I didn't get an opportunity to speak.
Oh, Councillor Shetty.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear that I think the staff have put a great deal of work into this submission, and I'd like to thank them for undertaking the work in this regard. I think the point that is attempted to be made here is that community's input always makes things stronger. So although the staff have put together what they think is the right submission in terms of these issues, and no doubt had some feedback from some of the elected representatives who are in majority of this council, which I think has certainly had an impact on what some of the things that have been put forward. We've noticed that there are a few issues that could be improved when you have take the time to find out what the community thinks, and there are a great deal of stakeholders and community members who care about Callan Park and its future, who would like to be able to have input on this issue. And I think, you know, the point here is that the submission could only be made better with the input from community members, from stakeholders. And so I think trying to make out that everyone on this side of the chamber is somehow trashing the staff is absolutely inaccurate. I think the staff have done a good job in terms of the information that they have and the pressures that they are feeling to put forward a particular position. But I think it's really important that we listen to our community, and that we should be able to talk about the fact that listening to our community makes things better without being attacked and being told that we're somehow turning against the staff. It's really critical that we listen to our community, and that is the point that is trying to be made with this amendment.
As a point of clarification, the word trashing was used by Councillor Stamoulis in his remarks. He said that this submission trashed Callan Park, and that's what I was referring to. I don't believe there was any accusation against any individual councillor in regards to my comments.
I'd like to clarify what I said, which was lack of being close to the park and knowing what the speed limit in the park was, and that is currently 25 kilometres, and it's proposed to bring into line with the Centennial Park, which is 30 kilometres. Not the community. I meant
amendment's been incorporated.
Yeah, I know, but you misrepresented.
I need to clarify something I've accepted.
Thank you for that.
No, I'm clarifying what you said.
I think it's been clarified. I'll miss these moments. Okay, I'll put that amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands. 6 in favour. All those against? 8 against. That has been defeated. We'll now return to the substantive motion. If there's no further discussion, I'll go to Councillor Scott for a right of reply.
Waived.
I'll put that motion. All those in favour? All those against? So that's 8 in favour, 6 against. 6 against making any submission. That has been carried. Next item.
Chair, may I please move item 2 with amendments that have been provided to the minute taker?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
I will.
Can I ask that that's displayed on the screen, please?
Thank you. I will thank the staff, in particular, and the Parks team who've worked hard on developing this strategy. I know that it has been delayed somewhat, so I'm really glad that it's finally coming to council and we'll have an opportunity to put it out on public exhibition. I've had a few engaging conversations with community stakeholders, including our local Labour Environmental Action Network, who are very invested in the content of this strategy, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to say. Given it's the last council meeting of the term, I also just want to acknowledge the significant amount of work that's gone into improving and protecting and enhancing our biodiversity in the Inner West over this term. In particular, the significant progress that's been made on completing the Greenway, the record investment in new tree planting over this term, the work that's been done by various councillors in the Cooks River Committee and around the Harbour catchment area as well, down to some of our smaller initiatives, such as our Verge Gardens policy and our microforests trial. There's some really exciting works that we've done, things that are underway, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this strategy has for us to deliver and work on in the next term. My amendment is simply to include the microforest trial, which Council endorsed way back in 2022 at the start of this term, to ensure that information about the microforest trial is included in the strategy in Section 3, Urban Ecology, and that the continuation of the trials is included as an action point under the action plan. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by...
I'd like to second. Thank you.
Councillor Langford, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I would like to speak to it. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to thank the staff for the delivery of this report. It's really fantastic to finally have the strategy. I know there's been delays, but it's such an important document, and it's really wonderful that we have that area of council better resourced now to hopefully deliver it. I wanted to also acknowledge that First Nations principles, including caring for country and reconciliation, have been made central to the plan, and I think that's really excellent. I note that there's discussion about improving water quality and expanding and enhancing and protecting the riparian zone, and that's obviously really important for the Cooks River and the Parramatta River. And also note the impact of densification on reducing biodiversity on private land, and that's something important that needs to be considered. I also have some amendments which I have tabled to the minute taker earlier, and part of that is the acknowledgement that is included in the plan that we need to. Sorry, another thing I wanted to mention is that there is the 2.9% shrub cover, and that actually supports the point that Councillor Smith put forward about microforests. We really need to have more understory in our area. We've got some trees going in, which is fantastic, but we're really, really low on that understory habitat, and that's really central to habitat and for birds, etc. So yeah, I wanted to suggest that we support that.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor De Cruz. Do you wish to speak to it? It's not compulsory.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, it won't be compulsory at all after this meeting.
I've got my last chances. Look, synthetic turf is really going to impact biodiversity, and we really need to consider how this and get a report back to the October meeting, I think, council meeting, rather than the September council meeting. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Deputy Mayor, do you wish to incorporate those amendments?
I certainly don't wish to incorporate point 1. I have no particular issue with point 2.
Okay. Point 2 is incorporated, so we're debating point 1, that council officers bring a report back to the October council meeting regarding synthetic turf, like Groundhog Day. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken to this that would like to? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to identify to the public that might be listening to this meeting how inconsistent items 1 and 2 are. Here we are identifying Callan Park as one of the major critical waterfront biodiversity assets in the entire municipality in item 2, and yet in item 1 we talk about 2 large synthetic fields as well as synthetic fields on top of building footprints. I don't know how many hectares that will add to synthetic turf, but just showing our public how inconsistent the very first 2 items are on our agenda tonight. Thank you.
There's no further discussion. I'll put that amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands. 6 in favour, all those against. That's 8 against. That has been defeated. We'll now return to the primary motion. If there's no further amendments, I'll go to the Deputy Mayor for a right of reply.
Waive that.
That's waived. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Could I please move item 4 with an amendment that I circulated earlier?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the staff for providing this report on the anti-racism strategy. I want to just take a moment to really acknowledge and thank Councillor Lockie for her work on this strategy over the last 3 years. I think we've worked really closely and collaboratively on this strategy, and I am really grateful for that collaboration. I also sincerely thank the members of the Inner West Council's Multicultural Advisory Committee, including all the members of that committee who have served during their term of council, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee, as well as the Inner West Multicultural Network. This anti-racism strategy has been a long time coming, and it's really groundbreaking. We can't really forget that once adopted, we will be the only council in New South Wales to date to have an anti-racism strategy in place, and I think that's a testament to this term of council. I think one of the most important things we can do as a council is to promote harmony, collaboration, and peace here in our local communities. There can be no question that racism undermines that work, and I'm proud that in this term of council we've called out racism, we've sought to address it. What I'd like to stress is that this is the beginning of the work we'll do in the anti-racism space. It's not an end point, and we will continue to shape, strengthen, and enliven this work into the future. This is a 2-year strategy, and we'll have the opportunity to review and revise in a short few years. In the meantime, we'll have a strategy that broadly gets the balance right and which frankly is all the stronger for the input and feedback from the Inner West Multicultural Network and all those local advocates and community organisations who help to shape and steer it. I'm pleased that following feedback from the network, as part of this strategy, the multicultural policy will be reviewed. The Australian Human Rights Commission definition of racism is included. There will be greater acknowledgement and support for staff around experiences of racism. Intersectionality will be specifically referenced, and the critical work undertaken by community organisations will be clearly called out and elevated. Critically, staff will undertake mandatory training in anti-racism. That's a vitally important way that we can work to address systemic racism as it occurs in council.
I move an extension of time of 2 minutes. Seconded by Councillor Stevens. All those in favour, against, declare that carried.
Thank you. That's a vitally important way that we can work to address systemic racism as it occurs in council and in our engagements with the community. I want to again thank everyone in the community who made submissions and participated in the development of the strategy, including those from, again, the network, from our MAC, from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee, and from the local organisations that helped by being part of the steering committee. This is a leading, it's productive, it's an excellent start to changing the tide on a systemic issue that causes significant harm to so many in our communities.
Thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Yes, I'd like to second it, please.
Councillor Lockie?
Yes, I'd also like to thank staff for all the work on this, and for Councillor Howard as well. I agree we have worked very collaboratively and I've appreciated that. I'd also like to thank those who gave constructive feedback to help us develop and refine this strategy, including our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee, our reference group for this strategy, our Youth Leaders Working Group, and in particular the Inner West Multicultural Network, particularly as they were integral to Council developing an anti-racism strategy in the first place. We are really fortunate to have so many multicultural community leaders connected with us through this network, including people who have significant experience and expertise in anti-racism work, and I'm pleased that their insights have helped us improve the strategy. I look forward to Council actively engaging with all of these groups on the strategy as it's rolled out, as this ongoing engagement will be critical to making the strategy a success. I'm particularly pleased that the strategy now incorporates mandatory anti-racism training for everyone at Council, including its councillors and leadership team. This is particularly important because in many ways Australia remains a tough place to be a person of colour. We've seen in the submissions to this strategy that there's still a strong denial among some in our community that racism exists at all, or that it's Council's problems to solve. And we see this lack of racial literacy play out in the destructive debates we've seen around issues such as Palestine, immigration, First Nations justice, and so much more. But we are all responsible for breaking down barriers that lead to discrimination against members of our community. And we will all gain by working together to actively call out and prevent racism. And I will be keen to see in 6 months' time a strong plan for rolling this out with investment committed to enable this. Otherwise, I've already told Councillor Howard, I'll be back in every public gallery talking about this. So thank you again to all the staff for your work on this.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I just speak very briefly to the motion as well? Firstly, I want to thank Councillor Howard for his dedication to bringing this strategy about. It wouldn't have happened if you hadn't been so committed to it. Secondly, I want to thank Councillor Lockie for her commitment and her collaboration in a bipartisan, multi-partisan fashion to getting this done. And I want to take the opportunity just to say to Councillor Lockie at her last council meeting, we've often been on different sides of the divide. I don't think we've ever voted the same way in a ballot at council, but I respect Councillor Lockie. She's made a big contribution to this council. She's a person of integrity. She's done a lot for our community, and I think that that should be acknowledged. And I'll say lastly to the Director of Community Services, Ruth Callaghan, who has seen this through. It hasn't been an easy process. It's not going to be easy when you're the first council in New South Wales to deliver an anti-racism strategy. And I think there's been some criticism of the council staff that has been unwarranted. But we've worked through it and we've got to this point, and I want to express my thanks and gratitude to Ruth for her work as well. This is a really important thing to do. Thank you to all three of you for getting it done. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried.
Mayor, can I please move item 5 with an amendment?
Yes, please proceed.
The Inner West Council annual grants. I've just got 2 amendments there that I've circulated earlier. I just really want to thank the staff for their dedicated work. Running a grants program is a lot of work and requires a lot of passion and energy and diligence, and I just thank the staff for all their work. I also just want to congratulate the recipients and thank everyone who made an application. I spent a long time working in arts, cultural and not-for-profit sectors, and I know just how much blood, sweat and tears goes into writing applications, and it's an emotional experience. So I thank everyone who did take the time to make an application. These amendments really are just twofold. One is just to conduct a workshop with potential applicants for grants in the multicultural program in particular. There was a lower number of applicants, and I think we would like to turn that around and see more engagement with organisations working in the culturally and linguistically diverse community. And I'm following that process that the report lays out about how we've engaged with arts and cultural organisations. I think that's a good method, that we actually run workshops and help to drive interest and drive understanding of the application process. Secondly, it's to investigate establishing a program of funding specifically for organisations and individuals to specifically support local people with disability as part of the next grant program. And I'm asking that a report be brought back in November 2024 regarding options to do so.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Scott. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
That's waived. Is there anyone who wishes to amend the motion or to oppose it? Councillor Stamoulis.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to ask, through the chair, to the relevant staff member, over the past few years, how much has the budget increased for our funding grants? Thank you.
Sorry, is this in relation to...
For our total funding grants.
Okay, I'll put that question to the council officers.
Through you, Chair, my understanding is that the budget's been stable for the last couple of years, but more wisely spent.
In light of that, could I move that the current budget per year then would have been $450 over the last few years? I'd like to move that council increases, as an amendment, council increases its budget allocation for grants by a factor of 10%. Thank you. As an amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Stamoulis, as you're aware, motions and amendments with a funding allocation are required under the Code of Meeting Practice to identify where the funding would be drawn from. So I'll ask you if you have an answer to that.
No, look, it's probably not appropriate at this time. We'll wait till the new council. Thanks.
So that's withdrawn.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor.
Can I just note, sorry, just one tick, just note, Councillor Stamoulis, you have actually voted against the adoption of any budget, I think, every year of this council.
That's incorrect, Mr Mayor. I voted for 2 of the 3. Thank you.
Okay. We can have no budget for 1 year.
I hope your reliability on other issues is better than that, Mr Mayor. Gee, yeah.
I've never voted against the adoption of a budget at council because it's a requirement of the Local Government Act and the place can't function without it.
Point of order, Mayor. This editorialising is just tiresome. Can we get on with it?
Well, you won't be on the council in a month, so you won't have to be so tiresome.
We wouldn't have had so many items held over if we'd been able to get through more last time.
Oh yeah, that's my fault. Okay, thank you.
Or you could have stood up and objected to the anti-Semitism.
Point of order, Mayor.
Withdrawn. Okay, let's move back to the substantive motion, moved by Councillor Howard, seconded by Councillor Scott. There is no amendment to it. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll go to Councillor Howard for a right of reply.
I waive my right.
I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. I think that brings us to item 8. Is that correct?
Yes, please, Chair, which I would like to move with an amendment. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. And thanks again to the staff for their work on preparing these bi-monthly reports. I appreciate it. It has been an additional administrative burden for you, but I think it goes to show the priority that's given to the rollout of EV infrastructure, both by the councillors and by the community. So it is much appreciated. And we are all extremely excited about the awarding of a New South Wales Government grant to Inner West Council to roll out 136 public EV chargers across the inner west, commencing from late this year or early next year, very soon, either way. My amendment seeks to address a little bit of FOMO that Councillor Howard in particular, as well as myself, are feeling about the allocation of where these chargers will be installed, acknowledging that the report locations that have been identified that Council has been consulting on have been selected by third-party providers based on a range of factors, including the capacity of the local grid, places with higher EV uptake and lower access to off-street parking, as well as safety and accessibility requirements. But we can't help but notice that of the 136 chargers that have been allocated across the inner west, only 9 are located in the Marrickville-Midgebury ward, which Councillor Howard is a little bit put out about, understandably. And while a significant amount more have been allocated to my ward in Stanmore-Dummen, only 2 are located in Stanmore and 1 in Petersham. So they're all very heavily concentrated in the far eastern end of the ward. So our amendment seeks to have Council engage with the third-party providers to advocate for a more equal distribution of these charges across all wards within the current cohort of locations, and to undertake detailed work to create a strong evidence base for third-party providers to install charges in locations in the Marrickville-Midgebury ward and in the western end of Stanmore-Dummen ward. Noting that this is just the beginning.
I'll move an extension of 2 minutes. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Howard. All those in favour or against, declare that carried. Please
Thank you.
proceed.
I won't need that long. Just to note that this is the beginning of the EV rollout across the inner west. We are very, very hopeful and optimistic that we'll have significantly more rollout, including through the next round of government grants to install additional chargers. And the state government has identified St Peters, Sydenham and Tempe in particular as having opportunities to increase that. But Councillor Howard and I are feeling a little bit of FOMO, and we'd love to have that addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Howard.
Can I please second the report? And just speak to the amendment the report of the amendment very quickly. Look, I just want to thank the Deputy Mayor especially for all her work to develop the strategy and to roll out electric vehicle chargers across the inner west. So thank you to her and thank you to the staff. The award of funding to roll out 136 electric chargers is a triumph. It's a testament to the work of the Deputy Mayor and to staff, and I'm very grateful to the New South Wales Government too. Like the Deputy Mayor, I've been contacted by a large number of residents who are angry and frankly disappointed at how few of the chargers are located in the Marrickville-Midgebury ward and the Stanmore-Dummen ward. I am assured that this is a result of a process whereby third-party providers identified locations, and I think that the Deputy Mayor gave an explanation of some of the reasons to that. But I think we have a responsibility to go further than that and to ensure that there's a more equitable spread across the local government area. These amendments, which the Deputy Mayor and I had tabled as a motion later in the meeting, work to address that inequity. They move to look to opportunities to relocate chargers within the current round, but also to ensure we are best placed to deliver chargers in underserved areas, including in Marrickville, Tempe, Sydenham and St Peters. This is the beginning of the work we'll do to deliver EV infrastructure in the inner west, but it's not good enough to leave it up to third-party providers to determine where these are. It's not good enough to just for us not to do the work to say, look, we need to do all that planning and all of the preparatory work so that we can put the best foot forward for the people of the suburbs in Marrickville-Midgebury. We need EV chargers in all our suburbs, and we're going to do more to deliver them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howard. Is there anyone opposed to the motion who wishes to amend it? Councillor De Cruz.
The first question is, I understand the grant is the rollout to be completed by April 2025. Is that correct? And has a feasibility study been done on that as to whether that's realistic? Through the chair.
That question. Sorry about that. I'll put that to council officers.
Through the chair, no feasibility study was part of this project. The state government had created their own heat maps based on their own feasibility studies to determine where the highest levels of uptake were. So council wasn't in a position to carry out a feasibility study within the 3 weeks we had to lodge the application.
The second question is, this has significant impact on residential parking in our streets, and I believe there's been a bit of concern about the loss of parking. Are we able to look at just the impact of parking off? And I'm mainly concerned that there's people who will be parking in these places from outside the LGA, so our residents will lose parking spaces.
Put that question to the officers.
Through the chair, at this stage we're still reviewing all of the submissions. There have been some that have raised parking issues, and we're working with our traffic team to look at what the implications are for the curbside parking. We have not addressed and do not have the ability to work out how many people would come from outside the LGA to park there. But given that most of the charges in residential areas are only 7 kilowatt, they're slow charges, so that would be somewhere people would park for a longer period of time. So it would not encourage, we wouldn't think it would encourage external people to drive into the LGA just to park there when it's such a slow charger.
I should remind you that's why we have residents parking, because people do drive in and park here. And question 3 was, you sort of answered it there, was will extra traffic coming into our local streets be generated by the charges being available or located in our streets?
Through the chair, we don't have any idea. At this stage, we're estimating that the initial uptake will be only 2 to 3 charges per day from most of the charges based on the number of vehicles registered. That will increase over time as electric vehicle uptake increases. But given that vehicles registered in our LGA have increased by 48% in the last 12 months, we see that there will be a lot of demand locally, and it will be just a balancing act between.
Thank you for that.
Mayor?
Yes, I've got Councillor Atkins, then Councillor Stamoulis.
I actually think that was Councillor Langford, but I also have an amendment.
My mistake. So I've got Councillor Langford, then Councillor Atkins, then Councillor Stamoulis.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank staff for preparing, the fact that we have 136 charging stations and that we were able to get that grant is fantastic, and really looking forward. I know many residents raised this with me, and yes, it was also been raised that the lack of charges in the Midgebury area, and so I want to thank Councillor Smith and Howard for raising this and putting up the amendments. I also had an amendment which I have provided to the minute takers earlier.
I'll ask the minute takers to display that on the screen. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, just briefly. It's really that there's some concern that we want to avoid, which is that any, and I'm sure that council officers are likely to be aware of it to some extent, but just to reassure residents that any EV charging locations won't impact on cycling works or planned active transport routes, and that be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor De Cruz. Do you need to speak to it? I'll go to the mover of the motion.
That's incorporated.
That's incorporated. Excellent. Is there any further opposition? Oh, sorry. We've got Councillor Atkins, then Councillor Stamoulis.
Not opposition at all. I also have an amendment. I provided it to the minute takers, but it was in relation to item 28, where this has come from. It's to add at the end of what is now, I think, point 5, the words, and this is as a result of concerned residents about having charging stations in front of their homes, and for engagement with residents where charging ports are to be placed outside houses. I think before the last meeting, this had been discussed with.
Yeah, I think that amendment that's displayed doesn't appear to be speaking to that.
No. I sent you, the minute takers, an email which had amendments to various items, and one was 0924 brackets 1 item 28,
It said add at the end of point 4, but it's point 5 in this.
Well, that's not what's displayed on the screen. Can I ask you to liaise with the minute takers, please? Just hold the meeting up while we're waiting for that.
If it's what's underlined on the screen currently, that's acceptable to me. It's fine.
That's incorporated. Did you have anything further, Councillor? Councillor Stamlis?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, I'm curious as to why Marrickville was allocated only 9, which is about 9 over 130, so about 6.6% of its allocation instead of the 20%. So I'm curious, question through the chair, why did they only get about 6.6 rather than a 20% allocation? Thank you.
Put that question to the council officers.
Through the chair. The original applications that we put in included Marrickville, Tempe, Sydenham and St Peters because we tried to convince our providers to give as broad a spread. Also included some in Croydon and Ashfield. The assessment process of the state government is what ruled out the other sites that we haven't got. However, I will point out that round 2 has highlighted Sydenham, Tempe, St Peters and Marrickville as areas that are deficient and are encouraging providers to go into those areas with round 2.
Any further question? Any further amendment or opposition to the motion? If not, I'll just remark very quickly, thank you to the Deputy Mayor for the work that she has done on this issue. She convened a summit with the electric vehicle industry, including the Electric Vehicle Council of Australia. That was 12 or 18 months ago, maybe longer. That's how things work at council. Brought forward all the ideas, and then the council officers have followed our resolutions and direction, and we're about to become the community that has the best access to public electric vehicle charging of any community in Australia. I'll make this point. The City of Sydney Council is getting 0 public electric vehicle charging stations out of this scheme. The reason that we're getting 136 is because of the policy work done by the Deputy Mayor, the effective work done by the council officers, and it's a great example of how the Inner West Council has been getting things done. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to make a right of reply?
Waived, thank you.
I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. That brings us, I believe, to item 9. Is that correct? Local Traffic Committee?
Does. And Chair, I would be happy to move that with an amendment. That in reference to the Petersham North LATM final report, which is in the June minutes, that Council allocate funding from the current budget for installation of the recommended raised pedestrian crossings and speed humps on Brighton Street in response to community concern about speeding and rat running down that particular street, with funding to be sourced from another project in the Stanmore-Damon ward. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much for that. Yes, Councillor
I'd
Shetty.
also like to move an amendment which I have sent to the minute takers.
Yep, please proceed.
That the council defer item 10 from the July meeting, the Dawn Fraser Baths Vicinity Balmain residential parking scheme, for further consideration at a future traffic committee meeting to consider incorporating Glassop Street. We've had a great deal of correspondence from residents of Glassop Street over the last month or so about the fact that they didn't quite hit the needed threshold to have that section of the RPS approved. I've spoken with council officers who have advised that they believe that there is enough of a response since that initial survey was done that would potentially enable it. So they are very amenable to this being deferred to be considered at a future meeting so that Glassop Street might be able to be incorporated.
I'm reticent just on the eve of summer of the swimming season to defer the resident parking scheme that is ready to go, but I agree with you that Glassop Street should be considered. So could we, instead of deferring the entire item, instead continue consultation with residents in Glassop Street about the residents parking scheme that they're proposing?
Could I just seek some advice from the council officers?
Certainly. I'll put that to the council officers.
Through the chair, we have received some additional letters of support from Glossop Street. So the support rate is now 32% of properties in Glossop Street, but of the responses received, it's 86% of responses received have supported.
So there's support for it?
Yeah, so there's support in it. Although that doesn't meet
not enough for you in a statutory sense.
Although it doesn't meet the old Leichhardt resident parking scheme requirement, it does meet the public domain parking policy for the Inner West, which is applicable for the majority of the Inner West.
So could we just implement it?
Yes.
Okay. You want to just implement
Sure,
it?
that'd be great.
Can you liaise with the minute? I would strongly support that being incorporated, but do you mind liaising with the minute takers? Any further amendments? I've got one, just in relation to the first item from the July Traffic Committee minutes, Mary Street, Lilyfield. I've provided wording for that to the minute taker. I'd like to propose that Council allocate funding for the proposed pedestrian crossing at Mary Street, Lilyfield in this year's budget to be funded by substituting another project from the Balmain-Balladari ward. Deputy Mayor, are you open to incorporating that into the primary motion? That's incorporated. Can I ask us to return to the amended wording that Councillor Shetty had proposed? I would support that. I'll second that amendment. Deputy Mayor, you happy to incorporate that? That's incorporated as well. Any further amendments to the motion? If not, I'll go to the Deputy Mayor for a right of reply.
That's waived.
That's waived. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. That brings us to item 11.
Mayor, could I please move item 11 with an amendment?
Yes, do you wish to speak to it?
Just very briefly, just to say how great it is that Inner West Council continues to provide support for sustainability measures in schools across the Inner West. And we know that when we teach young people in schools the principles around sustainability and how they can actually reduce their ecological footprint, we know that that translates to practices and behaviours at home. Both they teach their parents, as I have learned, and I hope that they too will carry that forward and teach their own children. I am just moving that we again investigate options to provide FOGO services to local schools and childcare centres, including surveying principals, P&Cs, P&Fs and childcare centre operators as to whether there's interest, and to provide a report back to Council in November.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Langford. Do you wish to speak to it? Is there anyone who's opposed to the motion who wants to amend it? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. That brings us to item 14, the investment report. Moved by Councillor Drury. Will you speak to it? Is there a seconder?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Lockie. Any objections? I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried.
I move. Oh, item 15 is already. Item 15.
Yes. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I do.
Please do.
Look, I'd like to thank the General Manager, the senior staff, and all of the staff of the council who work so hard to give us the progress in our community that our community wants and needs. For me, it's always been important that we try and look after the community as a whole, but I've always been conscious that there are members of our community who really do need some extra help and assistance if they're going to be part of our community. And we've got a number of items in this report and a number of the things that council have done that are really important for those who are disadvantaged in our community. Something I feel very passionate about. I'd also like to take this opportunity to point out three things I've learned. Three things I've learned from being on council is if you're a councillor and you have a good idea, then have a good talk to the staff about your great idea. Get some advice. get the experience, the wisdom, the training and the expertise of some great public servants, and we have great public servants. They're here working for our community day in, day out. I'll seek an extension of 2 minutes.
Moved by Councillor Howard, seconded by Councillor D'Arienzo. All those in favour, against, declare that carried.
Second thing that I do know, that our residents' desire for new services and facilities is always far stronger than their desire to pay. The third thing is that I think the financial discipline that allows us to do this work, to get these results, is important. There are some who say, you know, fuck your budget surplus or nonsense like that. It's just immature and stupid. You need financial discipline. You can't just stand up and say, let's add 10% to some budget. That doesn't work. That's not how you run a council. Along a similar vein, I think avoiding project creep, getting the parameters of a project right, dealing with the circumstances as things go through, but not allowing projects to creep. And our friends in North Sydney and their pool have certainly learned that. The other thing that I've learned is that strong project management and a strong project oversight of the major projects is pretty vital. So I commend this report, and I'll take an opportunity just to do a little poetry.
I'd say not again, but it's always good.
And I'll go with something from school. So let us go, then you and I, where the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherised upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats. And there's more of it, but I'll spare you. I've appreciated my time at council. I've appreciated working with a great lot of colleagues. These colleagues I've worked with here have been magnificent, and I thank the staff. I thank their colleagues on the other side who've worked collaboratively on a number of matters, and I've appreciated that support, particularly with Councillor Lockie, but with other of you on certain issues. And I commend this report.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Scott.
And I would like to speak to this motion. And on Councillor Drury's last occasion, I'm going to rise to speak Councillor Drury style. I'm a bit too tall for this microphone. That's okay. The success that the Inner West Council has had in its fiscal discipline and its delivery of major infrastructure projects is largely due to Councillor Mark Drury, a man who over 20 years has made more of an impact on working people's lives in the Inner West Council area than any one other councillor. We owe him a great deal for the position that we are in now, for the amenities that our community enjoys, for the fact that we can announce that we will do no special rate variation in the next term because he has brought us a balanced budget. Now, whatever the hyperbole is out there in the community about the council being in a shambles, and let's not pretend that those on the other side haven't said that from time to time. The fact is we are not. We are in an excellent position, and it's because of Councillor Drury. Yeah. I am going to miss him as a colleague, as a comrade, as a friend, as an advisor, and as a poet. I think a lover of poetry. I am going to call him every 5 minutes. He is going to hang up on me because he will be fishing on a well-deserved break from council after an incredibly long time as a dedicated public servant and as a champion of our community. Mark, we thank you so much for all that you have done. And every time that I swim at Ashfield Pool, I will think of you. Maybe I'll run into you there. Don't try fishing in the Olympic pool. But it is projects like that
that will be your legacy here, and we thank you so much for all you've done.
Hear, hear. Is there anyone who wishes to oppose the motion or to amend it?
I've got some questions for the officers, please.
Councillor De Cruz.
My concern is with the KPIs, and could you actually just explain whether we met our KPIs or didn't meet our KPIs? Thank you.
Put that question to the council officers.
Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair, 84% of our measures were on target or within 10% of the targets on page 329.
Thank you for that.
A further question. I noticed that in 4.3.1G is the companion animals KPI, and we have a target of 700, and then there was 1,500 studies done or patrols done in the fourth quarter of this year. Can you explain why that KPI, why we doubled the KPI, and is that actually the KPI we should have, and why it was all done in the fourth quarter?
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think we'll take that one on notice.
Thank you for that.
And the third question is, will you be reviewing the KPIs?
I'll put that question to the officers.
We review the KPIs every year when we do the operating plan.
Thank you for that. There's no further discussion.
With your indulgence, 1 second.
No, I had Councillor Stamoulis and then yourself, Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it went over some councillors' heads as to why I asked the questions, had we increased the grants funding over the past few years, and we were advised by the staff that we hadn't. And it went over their heads as to why I asked for the 10% increase, because inflation's gone up 10% over those 2 years, hasn't it? So we're eroding that funding grant budget by 10%, and it will erode even more over time. So that's where the science. See, it takes a bit of understanding of data and science and CPI, and I appreciate that that's not all well understood. The other thing too is in terms of the performance of the council, it's not this side of the table that said that that we're in deficit. In fact, it was the Boundaries Commission and their consultants that advised that this council has been in continuing deficit. So those statements are being made by an independent authority, not by any particular side of the table. This council operates deficits. I think it also said that our cost base is up 27%, and it went through a whole lot. We haven't found any net savings and a whole host of other things. My question to the general manager, if I could, now when we talk about projects being on track, I've noticed that when we look at some reports like CapEx, it's suggesting that the budget for certain, at certain times, our budget is way off, but we sort of catch up towards the end of the financial year, and the budget catch up, and we meet our expenditure. Is this sort of a similar measure, or is it a different measure? Because we're saying 53.
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Thanks. Yeah. The capital expenditure is different than the target that's in there for the operating. These are operating plan actions that I was looking at before.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Councillor Atkins.
Very briefly, but just in the spirit of the farewells that we are making tonight, Councillor De Cruz does not have a notice of motion that I could use to do this, but I think we should all acknowledge her service as well over a number of terms on this council, and her service to the people of Gulgardja Ward. And just to note that we're clearly going to have to find somebody else to be our designated question asker in the next term of council.
Thanks for that. There's no further discussion. I'll go to Councillor Drury for a right of reply. That's waived. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried.
Chair, I believe we're at item 17, and I'd like to move that with an amendment, please.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'll just get that amendment up on the screen because I'll read that out first and then speak to it. So my amendment is that Council endorse the naming of the event as Fest by Inner West, presented by Inner West Council and South by Southwest Sydney. The Council partner with Century Venues to hold events at the Enmore Theatre, the Factory Theatre, and investigate opportunities to host affiliate events at other venues within the Enmore Road SEP. And that Council engage with the local business community and business chambers, including the Newtown Enmore business community, on opportunities to drive economic development and visitation as part of the event. I am incredibly excited that we are bringing this official partnership between Inner West Council, South by Southwest Sydney and Century Venues to launch the inaugural Fest by Inner West in October this year, and hopefully it will be the first, but definitely not the last. This collaboration between the three partners will bring the vibrancy and the energy and the international platform, critically, of the South by Southwest Festival to the Inner West and to the Enmore Road SEP, and will put our thriving arts and music scene, which I know we've done a lot on over this term of council to support, onto the international stage. I'm particularly excited that council has already allocated $200,000 towards the event specifically to support that 50% of the performers at the satellite events will be local talent from the Inner West. So they will be our local artists and musicians and performers performing alongside global artists from the South by Southwest Sydney lineup. That is an enormous opportunity for any artist, and I'm really looking forward to our best and brightest being able to do what they do on the international stage. I have spoken at length in this chamber and elsewhere about how proud I am of the Enmore Road Special Entertainment Precinct, the first special entertainment precinct in the state. We know that it's delivering benefits for that local area, for the community and for the local economy as well. And this is just the latest step that we are taking as a council to put Enmore Road and the Inner West on the map as a key destination for tourists and visitors, both within Sydney and externally as well. South by Southwest Sydney was going to be entirely held around the Darling Harbour precinct of the city. I think that would have been an absolute failure to showcase the best of what Sydney has to offer and the most vibrant, interesting, diverse and exciting places that Sydney has to offer, which is undoubtedly here in the Inner West, and may I say undoubtedly on Enmore Road in particular. So I am really excited. Sorry, I may need 30 more seconds.
Move an extension of time of 1 minute, seconded by Councillor D'Arienzo. All those in favour, against, declare that carried.
Thank you. This is one of the biggest festivals in the world. There is no better place to host a satellite event than on Enmore Road, which is the heart of the live music and entertainment scene, not just in the Inner West, but in Sydney and beyond. And I could not be more excited that we are delivering this inaugural festival and this inaugural partnership to our community. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the motion? I'm happy to second it. Seconded by myself. I'll waive my right to speak. Is there anyone who opposes the motion or wishes to amend it? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Item 18, Inner West Cycling Update. Councillor Stevens.
I wish to move this item, and I understand that Councillors Atkins and Langford have supplied some amendments to the minute taker, which we can get to in a moment. I'm very pleased to see Council officers' detailed response to the Inner West Bicycle Coalition's Safe Cycling in the Inner West petition, and I thank officers for their work. The report sets out the status of key cycling projects in the Inner West, including but not limited to our flagship Greenway. In the 2024-25 financial year, Council will be investing $25.9 million in the Greenway and a further $3.3 million towards other bicycle facilities. It's worth noting that this has only been possible to deliver these projects through careful management of Council's finances, through collaboration with the Greenway Community Forum, the Bicycle Working Group, and positive input from community cycling groups and activists. As it happens, a radical council can't deliver a revolution in the way we get around. That actually requires fiscal discipline and careful planning. This report also highlights the potential new funding opportunities available under the Transport for New South Wales Strategic Cycleway Corridor Program. When the new council is formed later this year, it'll be essential that councillors and officers are proactive in seeking funding for strategic cycleway corridors in the Inner West. With a strategy and action plan now in place and under regular review, there's an opportunity in the next term for ramping up the delivery of active transport infrastructure. And whether I'm re-elected or not in 11 days from now, I look forward to getting on my bike and enjoying these new cycleways and cycle routes in the years to come.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Scott. Do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Is there anyone who wishes to oppose the motion or to amend it? If not, I'll put that.
Yes.
Oh, hold on. I've got Councillor
Sorry.
Langford, then Councillor Lockie.
Thank you. Yeah, I support all of the points that Councillor Stevens has made. I'm a cyclist myself, and it was really fantastic to have Council respond to the report by the Inner West Bicycle Coalition, and there's a lot of really positive information in there that I really hope as a resident that and a cyclist get to enjoy the benefits of in the near future. The amendments that I'm putting forward are to take advantage, if they could be displayed, thank you. One is to take advantage of any new capital works projects, if we can include bicycle racks and bicycle pumps, so that we don't miss out on any opportunities. And also some other amendments regarding reviews, including prioritisation of separated cycleways on busy roads as an alternative to relying on painted logos, deployment of modal filters to reduce rat running and create a linked network, and installation of shared paths on state and regional roads, and wherever the linked network cannot use modal filters or separated cycleways, to reduce crashes and injury. And the third part is that Council will prepare to restart consultation on an Addison Road separated cycleway, as it's viewed as an important active transport missing link. Thank you.
I'll ask the movers if they're willing to incorporate that. That's
Yes,
incorporated?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay, that's part of the primary motion. Any further amendment? Councillor Lockie?
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment that I sent through to the minute takers earlier, which essentially calls on Council to investigate how we can offer free or low-cost rider education courses to help children and adults build their skills and confidence in riding in the Inner West. We've offered these from time to time, I believe, in the past, but if we want to help promote a culture of cycling in the Inner West, these kinds of courses can really help. My daughter and I have done these kinds of courses in another LGA, and as well as teaching or refreshing riding skills, they're particularly useful for helping people find and navigate quieter routes where you can ride more safely, which is particularly important in areas like ours where we're still in the process of building that separated cycleway network, and where much of our network still relies on on-road paths. So I'd like to see what we can do to offer these courses in our area, and I move that way.
Is that incorporated?
Very happy to incorporate
Okay,
that.
that's in the primary motion. Any opposition or amendment?
Mr Mayor,
Yes.
with your indulgence, I would like to exercise my right to briefly speak to this motion, if I may, because I don't believe there'll be another opportunity to pay tribute to Councillor Stevens.
Please do.
Thank you. It is appropriate that we pay tribute to Councillor Stevens, who potentially might not get elected next time around.
Well,
I know he will, but I'm just saying. He's done so much to promote cycling, and he always says that he was elected unexpectedly, but that is not true. He was elected because he is a great champion for his community, and the cycling strategy is going to be something that, whether he is elected or not, as he raised, he is going to be associated with for quite some time in the future. So I'd like to thank Councillor Stevens for all his work on this strategy, and I hope that he is around in the next term to see it through.
Hear, hear. I just want to add to that. Councillor Stevens is the most overqualified person in the history of local government in New South Wales. He didn't need to run for council. We may or may not have promised him that he would not be elected, but he has approached his role as a councillor for the Leichhardt ward and his role as a custodian of the Inner West with the same sense of responsibility and professionalism that he has demonstrated in every every part of his life. I note that Councillor Stevens' parents are in attendance tonight. I just want to say, you must have done something right, because he's an extraordinarily accomplished person, but he's a great human being. And it's been a pleasure for all of us to work with Tim over this term. And he'll be a huge loss for the council if unfairly he's not re-elected. But I just want to express on behalf of everybody here, I'm sure I do speak for everybody, that Tim is a person of integrity, and we've been very lucky to have him on the Inner West Council for the last 3 years. Thanks very much, Tim. Okay, we are manipulating the procedures a bit tonight, but in a good spirit. Is there any amendment to the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Item 19, pathway to a safer Cooks River walking and cycling trail.
Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. I wanted to say thank you to the staff for preparing the report and really responding to community concerns about safety along around Tempe Station and the Cooks River. It's really great to have this work done and to have a bit of a plan as to how we can actually make it safer so that people can feel comfortable catching public transport from Tempe Station and enjoying recreation along the river after hours. I do have some amendments that I wanted to table to the report, and I've shared those with the minute taker earlier.
Thank you for that. I'll ask the minute takers to display those amendments on the screen. Do you wish to speak to them?
They're fairly self-explanatory, but really it's asking council to urgently commit to implement all the findings in the report and to review the budget at the next opportunity to identify how that funding can be found. Also, there was a section in the report where the police conducted a safety audit of one section of the Cooks River path, but there was another section that hasn't been audited, and so it requests that that audit be undertaken, particularly in light of the imminent close down of the T3 line and potentially increased use of Tempe Station. Whatever we can do to make that area safer, I think should be done. Just we don't want to have any more safety incidents there. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Is it seconded by Councillor Drury? Would you like to speak to it? That's waived. Does anyone wish to amend the motion or oppose it? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. So I think that brings us to item 22, stopping the spread of tobacconist and vape stores.
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor D'Arienzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could please ask that the minute taker put up the amendment. Thank you. On the 1st of July, the federal government introduced positive changes and reforms which restrict the sale of vape products to pharmacies, medical and nurse practitioners. And shortly after that, we organised an opportunity for the community to come together to discuss the impacts of these changes. I'd like to thank Simone Plummer and her team for organising the roundtable of community members together with the New South Wales Cancer Council, Ministry of Health and industry professionals. It was an interesting and engaging night, clearly articulating the impacts of the proliferation of vape and tobacco stores in the Inner West and the wonderful work that's being undertaken to stop their spread. There was significant interest in the room on the operation and the impact of the new law, so I propose through this amendment that we write to New South Wales Health to request a preliminary report on the compliance and enforcement activities in the Inner West since the reforms have been enacted.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Atkins. Do you wish to speak to it?
Only very briefly, thank you. Thank you for this, Councillor D'Arienzo. Thank you for the amendments. I'm particularly interested in this because in Darwin Ward there seems to be some proliferation of tobacconists and vape stores, and in particular we've had one right near the station in Stanmore, across the road from a primary school, near where, I don't even know, it feels like thousands of Newington boys, it must be hundreds, walk past every day, that opened up with the name of Puff Daddy originally. That has been removed, and I thank council staff for the interest that we have taken to the extent that we can. And I'd just like to note that we have already in the past moved motions which have asked government to give councils more powers in relation to the spread of tobacconist and vape stores. So I won't amend this here because we've done that in the past. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any opposition to the motion or amendments? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Brings us to item 25, mandatory reporting of reports received from Fire and Rescue New South Wales. Is there a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Scott. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Drury. Any opposition? No, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Brings us to item 26, notice of motion, invasion of Gaza and illegal occupation of Westbank. Just ask what page, I'll ask the minute takers to display that on the screen. Just going to speak to this very briefly, but there's some things that I think it is important to say. As everybody is aware, there was a motion tabled at the last council meeting in regards to boycotting Israeli enterprises, auditing council to determine whether we should boycott Israeli enterprises. And I just want to say a few important things, and I would request that I be able to say this without interruption. I believe what occurred at the last meeting was unacceptable, undemocratic, and disrespectful. After the meeting last year, when a group of the same or similar protesters attended, and we attempted to adhere to the code of meeting practice, the meeting was disrupted very badly because people insisted that 3 speakers was not enough. And so at the last meeting, I made the decision, it was endorsed unanimously by the council, I proposed it, that we hear from everyone. And it took 5 hours. And I've been on the council a while and I've seen some very eccentric, colourful, disruptive and disrespectful things, and I believe what we saw at the last meeting was one of the worst things that I've ever seen in my time on council. What I believe was the worst element of it was that when the local Inner West citizens who happened to have a Jewish sounding name, when their names were read out by me because they'd registered properly to be able to speak, I think all of them were booed and hissed just because their names happened to sound Jewish. My parents taught me that opposing anti-Semitism is an important matter of principle because they were baby boomers. They grew up just after the Second World War, so they grew up understanding what the Holocaust was. I haven't seen it much in my personal experience, but I saw it at the last meeting. That was anti-Semitism. And I have spoken subsequently to Inner West residents who attended the meeting, who have had to liaise with the police, had to move out of their homes temporarily because they were worried that they'd been identified and they would be targeted in their homes because of their willingness to come and speak at the meeting. The vast majority of those Inner West citizens are people who are to the left of centre. Very few of them, if any, I believe none, are supporters of Benjamin Netanyahu. As I stated at the meeting myself, I can't stand Benjamin Netanyahu. I consider him a disreputable and immoral person. But the question is, and I'll just ask for an extension of time.
I move an extension of 3 minutes.
Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor D'Arienzo. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. The question is the Inner West Council complicit in genocide? Because that's what was asserted by the protesters, and in fact by the Greens Party candidates who helped to organise the protest. As I alluded to in my remarks, we've all received advice from council officers that we have no investments with the Israeli government or Israeli associated entities. We've also received advice that cancelling the one contract which Councillor Griffiths didn't have the guts to actually reference in his motion or his
Point
remarks.
of order, Mayor.
Yes?
I know you didn't want us to interrupt, but it's inappropriate to say that somebody doesn't have the guts to do something that you're...
I'll withdraw that remark.
Thank you.
Councillor Griffiths had sought advice from council officers about whether our contract with Hewlett-Packard, which we'd all endorsed unanimously after a proper and transparent procurement process, whether that amounted to complicity in genocide. And the advice he received was that it didn't. In fact, my understanding is that Hewlett-Packard, that entity, is a publicly listed company in the United States, but also that it would be illegal for us to cancel a contract based on ethnicity or religion. Putting all of that aside, the abuse of the Inner West citizens who attended based on their ethnicity, putting that aside too, the deliberate disruption of a council meeting and the overrunning of the council meeting, and then forcing the elected representatives and the staff into the other room and then not allowing the meeting to continue, to put us in a position where none of us could leave, well, none of us who'd voted against the motion could safely leave the building, and the police had to be called by the general manager, and we had to be escorted to our cars. I'm sorry, that is totally unacceptable conduct. And I'm not going to make any apology for calling that out. Now, and I might need another extension of time, but I don't ask for them very often. This is a very important issue. I'm not up to my 3 minutes yet. I'll let you know if I get there. I want to move to the foreshadowed motion, which we're debating tonight, which I believe is a principled motion. It reflects the adopted position of the council, which almost all of us have voted for previously. We're noting that foreign affairs is the responsibility of the Commonwealth Government. We're restating our call for a permanent ceasefire. We're restating our condemnation of the attack by Hamas on October 7, but I note that Councillor De Cruz voted against that and the call for the release of hostages, and I believe that to be an unethical position. We're voting to say that the provisional measures ordered by the International Court of Justice, to note those. We're voting to say that the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, does that mean I've got 30 seconds to go? I'll ask for one more extension of time.
I move an extension of 2 minutes.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor D'Arienzo. All those in favour, against, declare that carried. We're voting to acknowledge that decision by the International Court of Justice that the occupation is illegal, unlawful. And we're voting to, what I'm proposing is that we vote to join with the Commonwealth Government in calling for an immediate ceasefire. We've already stated that last year. For Israel to act in accordance with the rulings of the International Court of Justice, for Israel to ensure accountability for ongoing acts of violence against Palestinians, for Israel to reverse the expansion of settlements in the Westbank. Can I just ask the minute takers to display the whole motion on the screen, please? And we're voting in support of a two-state solution in which we can achieve a Palestinian state. Now, maybe there's some people here tonight who don't support a two-state solution. And if so, they should say so on the record tonight. But if you don't support a two-state solution, what you support is a one-state solution. So either there's no Israelis or there's no Palestinians. And I believe that to be a morally indefensible position. I want to say also in closing that I believe that Councillor Griffiths' actions in riling up the protesters and taking no responsibility for ensuring that the code of meeting practice was upheld was wrong. And the fact that he's not here tonight reflects badly on him. So I'll move that motion. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Drury. Do you wish to speak to it?
I do. I think we all are shocked and appalled by what we see. I think we all understand there is a history. I think we all understand what our role here is as councillors. I think this statement is clear, unequivocal, and it's the correct position for us to take.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone who wishes to oppose the motion or to amend it? Councillor Lockie?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Look, I won't be supporting this motion as it just doesn't do anything. If this is all some councillors can stand behind, so be it. But Mayor, as you said, a lot of this is stuff that we've already voted upon before. And I think from where we are now, it is a weak position. I did want to come back to some comments that you made, Mayor, in our last meeting on this and about how our existing procurement policy deliberately excludes, and I'll quote now, racially, nationally or ethnically based procurement decisions.
Given that the only changes that were being proposed to Council's procurement and investment policies in that meeting were to review our relationships to exclude companies involved in the weapons industry and or which are complicit in or profiting from human rights violations, not necessarily Israeli corporations, I should add, I found those comments deeply concerning, and I know others did too. That's because such exclusions aren't based on race, nationality, or ethnicity. They are about protecting human rights. In our last meeting, a number of speakers referred to the boycotts, divestments and sanctions that helped rid South Africa of apartheid. That campaign didn't target anyone based on race, nationality or ethnicity. It targeted a regime that was committing horrific human rights violations, as well as the corporations that were enabling and profiting from them. It was an international call for justice and the protection of human rights. Once that regime ended apartheid, the BDS campaign ended too. Similarly, the motion we considered in our last meeting sought to examine how we could make sure Council's investments and procurements don't inadvertently fund or enable human rights violations, whether they occur in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories or anywhere else. We all need to be careful of weaponising accusations of race or anti-Semitism to shut down such
I'd
debates.
like to move an extension of time of
30
3
seconds is
minutes.
fine.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Shetty. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Atkins. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried.
And I think it's a real shame that we've missed our opportunity to improve our policies and practices, particularly now that our neighbouring councils are moving ahead on this front.
Thank you for that. Further discussion? Councillor De Cruz? Can I ask you to turn your microphone on, please, Councillor?
Yes, I too won't be supporting this motion. And I think the inclusion of point 8 is particularly rich because the New South Wales government today said that everybody has to explain why they're not procuring from within the state. And I understand that we do not have such procurement requirements of within the local area. The state government said we should give, and furthermore, that I had a question and notice some time ago, and I was a bit shocked to find out that we are actually preferencing ADs which employ people, disabled people at sub-minimum wage, and that is a regulation under the New South Wales state government that we conform with. So I think
point of order. Can I seek clarification on the point that Councillor De Cruz just made? Sorry.
Sorry, is that a point of order?
Well, they don't qualify that to do it.
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor...
I'm just asking, was the suggestion that council was not complying with that, or that the state
council's complying with the law, which is the state law, which has got to be changed.
Thank you. Just wanted a point of clarification. It's important.
Okay. Thank you for that, Councillor Howard.
And-
Councillor De Cruz, please proceed.
And we are investing in point 7, our investments are socially responsible, so socially responsible in banks who are shutting down branches and ATMs in our LGA. So I think we are actually, in fact, not only shooting ourselves in the foot, and we are actually compromising our own ethics and our own. So I think you questioning my ethics is actually a bit difficult, when in fact this motion is actually seeking to say that you've got a higher level of ethics, which is certainly not applicable. So, and also, can I just clarify that is anti-Semitism a religious thing or an ethnic thing?
Are you posing that as a question to me at the conclusion of your remarks?
You used the question that anti-Semitism was an anti-ethnic thing.
Have you concluded your remarks?
Yes, I have.
I believe everyone here understands the definition of anti-Semitism. And as I've stated, I believe that the booing and hissing of people based on the fact that they had a Jewish-sounding name constituted anti-Semitism.
Sorry, point of order. That isn't actually what happened.
That
No, it
absolutely
isn't. It
is what
wasn't based on their
happened. That
Jewish
absolutely
names.
is what happened.
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Lockie, as you know, I've stated my respect for you tonight. That's not a point of order. I understand you disagree, but I think the record shows what occurred, as does the public reportage. Councillor De Cruz, I've answered your question, but can I state to you as a question You have previously voted against condemning the attacks of Hamas on October 7. Do you retract that now? Can I ask you to turn your microphone on, please?
I'm not answering that question. And
That is your right.
I think that
is your right.
I think that your Benjamin Netanyahu's apology to his own people recently in the death
You've
of
answered
the
the question.
I think Councillor De Cruz has given us her answer.
You've answered your question. And can I ask further, Councillor De Cruz, you've also voted against the adoption by all other councillors to call for the release of all hostages. Do you retract that now?
As soon as Israel withdraws from all the occupied territories.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying your position. Councillor Stamoulis.
Mayor, and in your opening talk about this, I understand that you spoke about your perspective and also Labor councillors' perspective, and I don't have a right to make any judgment about how you may have felt and how other councillors may have felt on the evening, only to say that that I wouldn't concur that that you presented entirely correctly on behalf of the entire council and in fact the gallery itself. There would be differences of opinion there, and I think it's fair to say that was true. Additionally, I think the substance of the motion as well, that is the review of the procurement policy, was the essence of the motion. We wanted information back from council. We wanted to understand that better so that we could make an informed decision. I'm not sure whether this is entirely taking us in that direction or in fact possibly covering ground that's already been covered, and you mentioned that yourself before. I think we should be tackling the substantive item. And the question that I'd like to ask through the chair, in terms of the sister city relationship with Bethlehem that we're reaffirming tonight, what has the work that we've been doing over the last term or 7 years, what is that work, and would someone fill us in on some of that detail? Thank you.
Put that question to the council officers.
I have to take it on notice.
That's taken on notice.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's a very important part of your motion there that we have that sister city relationship. So, Mr. Mayor, obviously you've thought about that in constructing that. So, can I put that to you? Thank you. What have we been doing over the last 7 years? Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, could you just restate that?
So you're saying let's reaffirm our sister city relationship with Bethlehem. So what is it that? What are the key things that we've done over the past 7 years in relation to our sister city relationship? Thank you.
At the time of the amalgamation, my recollection is that there were 12 or 13 sister city relationships between the three former councils.
Officer, perhaps I can provide some clarity because a report.
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz.
A report was brought on this last September.
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz. Can I just call you to order, please? Councillor Stamoulis has put a question to me, which I'm attempting to answer.
I mean, actually,
can I ask you to desist from interjecting?
I'm just clarifying you.
Councillor
what
De
the point
Cruz,
is.
I'll warn you. I'll issue you a warning, but I'll respectfully request that you desist from interjecting so that I can answer Councillor Stamoulis's question. My recollection, and this may not be absolutely accurate, is that at the time of the amalgamation there were 12 or 13 sister city relationships between former councils, between Leichhardt, Ashfield and Marrickville councils and various cities overseas. They were all suspended at the time of the amalgamation by the administrator. The only relationship that Leichhardt Council had, which I'm familiar with, is we had one with Giovinazzo, where they have the Plaza de Leichhardt in Giovinazzo, and with Maliana in East Timor. But there were a large number of sister city relationships with Marrickville Council. And in the in-between time, in the intervening 8 years, some of those relationships, while there's been no official continuation of the sister city relationship, certainly in the case of the relationship with Bethlehem, there's been ongoing communication and collaboration, and the council officers have said that they'll take on notice your question to identify precisely what that is. The motion before us identifies that we should reaffirm that relationship. I'll note that the general public is fairly sceptical about sister city relationships between councils and overseas cities, because often in the past, not necessarily in the case of our councils, that has involved junkets and overseas trips for elected representatives that the public don't support. Do you have a further question?
You sort of answered it, but not fully. Thank you.
I've answered it as well as I can.
Am I allowed to ask a further question?
Of course you are.
Can we get an update on the 12th of September 2023 resolution to develop a community-to-community framework?
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Through you, Chair. As per the council resolution, that framework is being developed. I saw a first draft of it and I didn't think it covered off a number of issues. So officers are doing some more work on that.
Thank you for that. Further discussion? Councillor Atkins.
I too will be voting against this motion. I would like to just address the matter that Councillor Lockie just tried to address. I think there are different perceptions of what happened on that night, and of what the booing and hissing was in relation to. My perception was very much that those who were here to support Councillor Griffith's motion, in fact, took some control of what was happening there and stopped people and instructed people to turn their backs and be quiet. So I think we need to give them some credit for preventing what could have been seen as anti-Semitism. I'm voting against this motion because it does nothing. I don't agree that our investment and procurement policies are sufficient to ensure that rates are not invested in this way. And I think it's irrelevant that we voted for these policies relatively recently in May. That doesn't stop us improving them at any time. The original motion simply asked for a report on the sufficiency of those policies, any necessary amendments, and for an audit of our investments and procurements. It did not call for us to breach any contracts, divest any investments. It's notable that BDS proponents themselves don't call for immediate divestment or boycott. In those circumstances, there's nothing that says we have to breach a contract with any company. When Councillor Griffiths received advice as to the difficulty of extracting ourselves from certain of our contracts, he withdrew any reference to that from the original motion. Thank you.
Councillor Atkins, can I put to you a question? I've received advice that councillor officers are unaware of any investment from council that is complicit in the Israeli military operations in Gaza and the Palestinian territories. Are you aware of any?
No, that's why the motion asked for an audit of our investments and procurements.
I'll put one further question to you. The organisers of the protest outside the chamber and the subsequent overrunning of the council chamber asserted in their promotion of the event that the council was complicit in genocide. Is that your view?
I don't know until we do an audit, Mayor.
Okay, thank you for
and
that.
Can I just take exception with the point of view that they overran the meeting? You invited them all in and not one of them tried to get past a simple rope barrier.
Yelling repeatedly while we were trying to speak does not constitute respect for the meeting. It was not able to be conducted.
I'll call the meeting to order. I agree with that comment. Councillor Atkins, one last question. One of the protesters asserted that my parents would be ashamed of me because they had been, sorry, if I can finish my question, because they had been involved in anti-apartheid activity. At the time of their activity, the Australian government was in support of the apartheid regime, and there were a range of demonstrable, publicly disclosed links between Australia and business interests in South Africa. Do you believe that the two situations are commensurate, that the Inner West Council is complicit in genocide in the same way?
I have told you that I do not know whether we are complicit in genocide. I voted for a motion which asked for an audit of our investments. If we are invested in certain companies or have procurement from certain companies, we may be.
Okay, thank you. Just lastly, you're the Greens candidate for mayor at this election.
No,
Will this issue
I
be
do not. I'm sorry. There is no candidacy for mayor.
Oh.
We are all candidates at the election. After the election, the elected councillors will vote for mayor. I'm not aware that the Greens have made any statement as to who
So
is
there's
the
no candidate for mayor. Okay, thank you for that. Further discussion? Councillor Shetty?
Look, I'm not going to speak for long, but I just want to acknowledge that there was some behaviour in this chamber that was unacceptable. And I'm sorry that people made disparaging remarks about you and about your parents. I don't think that that was the right thing to do, and I certainly don't support that sort of behaviour. I think that personally, I don't support the disrespect or intimidation of community members who take the time to come and speak and offer their feedback on an important issue, and I'm confident that my colleagues do not support that either. I think it's very important that the activities of a citizens group who are here, who are protesting and who have very strong feelings are not conflated with the behaviour of councillors or candidates who share their concerns about human rights and council's ethical investment policies. I understand that it was a very uncomfortable evening, and I know that people said and did things who were here to protest, who were feeling very passionate and who behaved in an inappropriate manner. I absolutely acknowledge that. But I don't think that it's reasonable to conflate their activities with Greens candidates and Greens councillors, to say that Greens had organised the protest, which is not accurate. It was organised by the protest group, remind me their name, Inner West for Palestine? Inner West for Palestine. And I think it's really important that we don't go to the media and try and pretend that people who support ethical and investment and procurement policies or have concerns and want to understand it better are the perpetrators of behaviour that was inappropriate. And I think that it has been really unfortunate that that has been the way that this has been framed in the public.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Shetty. Just one question to you. We all heard at one point one of the people with a Jewish sounding name, who I presume is of the Jewish religion, made a comment and was then called Mrs. Netanyahu. Do you condemn that comment?
I wasn't in the chamber. You might recall that I was on my way in from New South Wales Parliament and was zoomed in for that portion of the meeting. So I didn't hear it in person, but I don't think it would be appropriate for somebody to say that to somebody else.
Okay, thank you for that. I thought it was totally inappropriate and anti-Semitic. Further discussion? There's no further discussion. I'll just make a brief right of reply. Firstly, whether you call it anti-Semitism or not, and it was, booing or hissing or turning your back on people while they're speaking in the public gallery at an Inner West Council meeting is the polite version. I still consider that incredibly disrespectful, and I would hope never to see it again in this gallery. And I do think it's troubling that some councillors are unwilling, not you, Councillor Shetty, but some councillors are unwilling to condemn what was overt anti-Semitism. But the more troubling thing is that there's a large number of candidates running at this election who, if elected, will be making foreign affairs and this particular issue one of the central concerns of this council. What that will result in is a distraction with services going backwards and rates going up. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That's 8 councillors in support. All those against? 6 councillors against. I'll declare that carried. I will propose that we adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes to have a brief break. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Meeting. I'll ask councillors to take their seats. Okay, the meeting is resumed. Have we dealt with item 28?
I believe it's redundant now, Chair, because we moved it substantively as an amendment.
Okay, redundant and withdrawn. Item 29, Railway Parade Annandale, which is my motion, which I was happy to move on block. So, Councillor Shetty, did you want to discuss that?
Yeah, look, I'm keen to second it, and I just wanted to move a very small amendment.
Yep.
That council convene an on-site meeting with ward councillors, just to insert the 3 words, with ward councillors and residents of Railway Parade to consult on improvements. I want to thank you for bringing this, Mayor. I've been in contact with the residents of Railway Parade for the last couple of years since I moved a motion to try and get some improvements along that stretch of road, including a native planting schedule that has all been delayed because of WestConnex. I wanted to thank Lisa Chambers, who spoke at the last meeting, and other members of the community who have been really active in trying to secure improvements to Railway Parade, and they've obviously just had a really tough time with all of the WestConnex works and continue to suffer from the impacts of the Roselle interchange being open. So I just wanted to, thank the community for their engagement. Hope that this will start to get some action, and thank you, Mayor, for bringing this forward, and thank you to Lisa and the other residents. It's a really important issue.
Happy to incorporate your amendment. Has it been provided to the minute takers?
It's only 3 words that council.
I know, but you've used a lot more than that to speak to my motion.
Sorry, it looks like it might have changed slightly from what I read on the papers. Just yeah, it's there. It's in the point 2. So that council convene an on-site meeting with ward councillors and residents of Railway Parade. If you can see it on the screen.
Happy to incorporate it.
Thank you.
I'm going to refrain from speaking to it, even though it was my motion and you've spoken to it. And I'm happy for you to be the seconder. Is there any objection? I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Item 31, Notice of Motion, Sister City Relationship with Bethlehem is redundant. No need to deal with that. Item 32, Notice of Motion, Gambling Harm Minimisation.
Thank you. I move the motion with amendments which I have provided to council officers, which remove points 3 and 4. Can we get it up on the screen?
Request that the council officers display the amendments on the screen.
And it appears that the amendment has been made. Thank you. In the reason we've removed those points is that the main purpose of this motion is to make sure that things are happening for Gambling Awareness Week 2024, which is in October, and which means that we may not be able to get to a council meeting immediately after the election to be able to make sure that organisations are supported in putting on events during Gambling Awareness Week. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to second Councillor Atkins' amendment. I've discussed her amended motion and thank her for bringing forward what she has.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes.
I'd just like to thank everybody who attended the round table, as well as the staff for organising it. and I look forward to reading that report when the outcomes come back to the newly elected council in October, even though I won't be among those councillors. The amended motion, as Councillor Atkins said, is a good opportunity for council to support critical gambling harm minimisation work that will be happening in our community during Gambling Awareness Week. I also want to acknowledge and really thank Councillor Atkins for the collaboration that we've done together on this issue. It's been wonderful to work with you on gambling harm minimisation during this term on council, and I know you share my absolute commitment to reducing the terrible harm gambling causes within our community. I look forward to seeing you and council make further progress on this next term.
Thank you for that. If there's no one in opposition, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Next item, item 33. Councillor Stamoulis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note that councillors have received the report in terms of the water quality and sediment testing for the Callan Park swim site as part of our briefing notes. There's only two other things then that need to be addressed, and I wonder if I could put these this evening as questions through the chair, and that is, will the Callan Park swim site be a supervised facility, such as by lifeguards or other? That's my first question. Thank you.
I'll put that to the council officers.
Through you, Chair, the Callan Park swim site is designed to be supervision free. It meets the design requirements of Life Saving Australia, which sets out some standards around unsupervised swimming.
Thank you for that.
And the second question is point 3, that council advise councillors whether a risk assessment has been done, and that risk assessment includes a number of things there stated in the notice of motion.
Put that question to the officers.
Through you, Chair, this will form part of the project plan ongoing.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, has a risk assessment been done?
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Through you, Chair, there has been some risk assessment in terms of water quality, but risk assessment will be an ongoing matter in terms of the project plan.
Okay, well, I'm happy to withdraw that motion then. Thanks.
Withdrawn?
Yeah.
Okay, next item. Item 34. Supporting and growing reuse and the Inner West circular economy. Councillor Langford.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this motion is recognising and supporting our wonderful reuse economy across the Inner West. We've got many great reuse businesses in our LGA, and it's a growing area, and it also grows jobs, it encourages creativity, and it reduces waste and consumption. Council already does support the circular economy, and there are further opportunities for Council to support and elevate it. The motion was really prompted by the recently released New South Wales reuse data study that found that reuse is by far the most eco-friendly option, second only to reducing consumption. The motion includes having a roundtable that will provide opportunities to for all the stakeholders to get together and work with staff and each other to come up with ideas as to how they can grow and support each other. And I also just want to acknowledge the speakers who spoke to this at the last council meeting. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to second, if I could.
Seconded by Councillor Howard. Do you wish to speak to it?
Just very briefly, because I've just circulated some amendments that I sent to the note takers, just very small things. Really what the amendments do is just two things. One, it just really wanted to address the language around develop versus continue to make the Inner West a leader in waste avoidance, because I do think it's really important that we acknowledge that we are a leading community. We have done an extraordinary amount of work on this council term alone to make the Inner West a leading community in the circular economy, and our council a leading council when it comes to managing waste and developing the circular economy. Obviously, the rollout of FOGO has been a huge indicator of that. We've also created the Inner West Sustainability Hub, where I note a lot of the organisations that Councillor Langford has raised are housed. So I just think it's really important that we acknowledge that important work, and of course acknowledge and thank all those local organisations in the community who are doing that work as well. The second is really just an acknowledgement as well that we want to encourage Perfect Match murals artists to use a paint, not require them to do that. And I just felt there might have been some clarity, extra clarity added to that in that sense. So I thank Councillor Langford. I thank all those excellent organisations that are listed here. And I look forward to the Inner West Council continuing to lead and build upon the extraordinary foundation we've made in the last few years of this term.
Okay, so that's an amendment from you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Langford, you happy to incorporate that?
Yeah.
And will you be the seconder of the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there any opposition to that? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Does that bring us to Lewisham Town Centre upgrade, item 39?
It does. Thank you, Chair. And I have subsequently amended.
Mr. Mayor, I think we might need to go back and do 36.
Yep,
Tempe
no,
Station.
I've stuffed it up again. Item 36, notice of motion, Tempe train station accessibility.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this motion is really just about recognising that Tempe Station doesn't have a lift and is not accessible. It does have a ramp on one side, but the other side is not accessible. It has stairs, and if someone in a wheelchair would have to go around to the other side, which is a long way and difficult, especially given the imminent shutdown of the T3 line and the anticipated increased use of Tempe Station. Obviously, we're not going to get a lift in time for that, but I think it is time that Tempe Station became, just accessible for people with prams, etc. It doesn't really need much explanation, and we know that this council really supports accessibility, and we pride ourselves on that and inclusivity. So, yeah, this motion is really asking us to write to the Minister for Transport to request the installation and to bring a report back to the November meeting outlining the response from the Minister. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor De Cruz, do you wish to speak to it?
No, that's fine.
Okay. No amendments? I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Item 44. Now I'm just going to seek advice from Councillor.
Chair, sorry, you've skipped mine.
Very poor.
Twice in a row.
Because I struck it out when I went to it before. Sorry, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I have amended this motion since I submitted it to the last meeting, so I would just request that the amended version of the motion be displayed, if that's possible. Thank you. Firstly, I want to acknowledge the long-awaited commitment by the Transport Minister, Joe Callan, and the New South Wales Labor Government to finally upgrade Lewisham Station to improve accessibility and safety and address the chronic flooding in the underpass, which has been the bane of many a Lewisham resident, myself included, when I lived there. After more than a decade of neglect by the former coalition government, it is fantastic to finally have a New South Wales government that actually gives a damn about the Inner West, and in particular gives a damn about Lewisham and improving safety and accessibility for our public transport hubs. This motion really just seeks to acknowledge that the upgrade of the station presents a prime opportunity and a really significant opportunity to also undertake some fantastic placemaking and upgrade works for Lewisham Town Centre and the station precinct more generally, particularly on Victoria Street and Railway Terrace. I think this is an opportunity that can't be missed. Lots of people are aware that Lewisham has been sort of the forgotten or neglected little suburb of Stanmore, Dumman Ward, certainly, and it shouldn't be. It's a fantastic suburb with a fantastic community. And with the new station, I think there's every opportunity to turn it into a real destination and to deliver some fantastic upgrades, particularly as part of our Main Streets Revitalisation project. I want to, in particular, acknowledge a great group that has recently started organising in the Lewisham community called Lewisham Better Streets, who are particularly passionate about improving placemaking, traffic calming, pedestrianisation, and undertaking some real enhancements to that local community. And a lot of the amendments that are underlined in that motion have come from that group, so I pay tribute to them. I understand a few of them are watching the proceedings online because they weren't able to register to speak. But I think the opportunity to develop a master plan, to coordinate and work with Transport for New South Wales, 30
I'm
seconds,
moving an extension of time of 1 minute. Seconded by Councillor Stevens. All those in favour, against, declare that carried.
Sorry, thank you.
It's okay.
The opportunity to coordinate on upgrade and enhancement and placemaking works in Lewisham alongside Transport for New South Wales upgrades is an opportunity that we can't afford to miss. And I'm really looking forward to engaging with the community about what that could look like, what could be possible in particular around traffic calming measures, increased pedestrianisation around the station precinct, a public art program, which is a really exciting opportunity, particularly to address the horrible station wall along Railway Terrace that everyone is sick to death of staring at, improving active transport links, and just generally making it a destination place that encourages local businesses, encourages residents and visitors, and I'm really looking forward to that process. Thank you.
I'd like to second that, please.
Councillor Atkins is happy to second the motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
Only very briefly. As Councillor Smith has said, it's been clear for some time that Lewisham deserves an update. The local community has been calling for it and has created not one, but two community groups to get it happening, who I understand are about to come together and work together. It's crying out for a master plan to take it forward, to make it more attractive for the people that live and work there, and to attract creatives and small businesses, which has already started to happen in the area around Victoria Street. And the station upgrades offer the perfect opportunity to encourage and facilitate it. Part of this is making it safer for both cyclists and walkers. At the moment, the current cycleway ends abruptly opposite Hunter Street, requiring cyclists to cross Railway Terrace without a marked crossing or traffic light. So that's the particular reference in 3E there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any opposition to the motion or amendment to it? No? I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Now I'll try not to get this wrong again. Is the next item item 44? Okay, I'm on track. Councillor Stamoulis and Councillor Shetty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, in starting this, I'd like to quickly amend point 6 by removing the words prior to proposing the installation of any new synthetic turf fields. Just remove those words, so that one of the key things here in regard to our sporting fields is engaging with the sporting clubs to see how we can improve the playability and maintenance of our fields. That's an important part of the context of this motion. But first of all, pardon me, this motion states that Greater Sydney Parklands is the landowner at Callan Park, and any playing fields and installations of them would first require the consent of Greater Sydney Parklands. We've been asking many months now, has there been any movement forward on this? We have not had an answer as to whether they'd entertain or engage with us in terms of synthetic turf. We go further down, and we also need to seek approval, point 5, from the Heritage Council, and we haven't got any agreement or thought process that they would entertain the idea of, at this moment, of synthetic turf at Callan Park. Additionally, the $20 million that's been proposed, I think since December 23 or January 24, is not yet in our account. I'm concerned that it will ever come. And I'd like some clarification on whether that money will ever be received by council. because we also had similar promises made before the last election, and we didn't get $15 million of funding from state government. That was an election promise, and we never received that $15 million. I'm thinking until you get that money, we don't know. We don't know whether we'll be receiving this. And of course, we also note that there's a plan of management currently in process for Callan Park being undertaken by the GSP. We shouldn't be preempting what they're doing at the moment. We also hear from that early feedback stating that there's...
Do you need an extension of time?
1 minute, thanks, Mr Mayor, if that's possible.
Could get better.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Drury, seconded by Councillor Lockie. See if you can bring it home.
Absolutely. So what we're saying here is that early feedback's indicating that there is opposition to synthetic turf being installed at Callan Park in an 1870s iconic landscape of heritage significance at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The seconder is Councillor Shetty.
Thank you. Look, I'm only going to speak briefly because I think we talked about this in great detail during the last council meeting. Only to say that I think although it's been very clear that the sporting fields are lobbying very hard for synthetic fields, that we need to also acknowledge the fact that there is a large cohort within the community of varied perspectives, views, backgrounds, that includes Friends of Callan Park, but is certainly not limited to them, that includes dog walkers, but is certainly not limited to them, includes cricket players, parents of kids who play football, citizens concerned about climate change and the environmental impact. And I think it's really critical that we acknowledge that and we don't pretend that there aren't concerns around the environment when we're considering a decision like whether we are going to proceed with something like that. I think it's really important to note that the Greater Sydney Parklands is the landowner and that they have acknowledged. So point two, that in Greater Sydney Parklands early engagement, they acknowledge that early feedback indicates diverse views in relation to synthetic sporting fields in Callan Park. I think it's really important to acknowledge these different views. I think it's really critical that we don't jump the gun as a council and endorse a position that has not been had thorough community consultation, as I said last time, and I think this just acknowledges that fact. And I think it's very important that we also find out what the Heritage Council thinks and be clear with the community that we can have a respectful and grown-up conversation about the best way forwards on this issue, also while trying to make sure that our natural sport playing fields are in the best shape that they can be to try and do the best that we can for our clubs, whether or not the synthetic fields proceed.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I wish to speak against the motion, and in doing so, I want to start by explaining why Leichhardt Saints Football Club and Balmain District Football Club have been advocating strongly for all-weather playing surfaces. Both of those clubs have had an ongoing long-term influx of junior players. That's a good thing. More and more kids in the inner west are wanting to play football. And then since the World Cup last year, the Matildas effect has meant that they've had an even larger incoming flow of women and girls. Also a good thing. We want women and girls to play sport and to play football. And because of that, and because of the fact that we don't have new open spaces coming online very often in our community, they're both having to turn kids away from participating in sport. And I want to say up front that I believe that that's an important issue. Kids are missing out on the health and social benefits of participating in sport. Hasn't been mentioned by either of the movers of this motion. I think that's a central concern for this council. And I want to address the issues that have been raised by the science. I'll put it this way. The vast array of propaganda that's been put out by Friends of Callan Park, and they do seem to have spent a lot of money without being registered as a third-party political organisation. The vast array of it, there's a lot of Trumpy rhetoric in it from my perspective. Non-scientific information dressed up as scientific information. The truth is that when all-weather surfaces first started being used, there was, I'm going to need an extension of time.
I'll move 3 minutes for you, Mr Mayor.
Oh, 3? I only need 2. Moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Howard. All those in favour, against, declare it carried. When all-weather fields first came online, they were using a rubber infill. It was hot. It was not great to play on, resulted in grazes and injuries for players. But the technology we're using now throughout the inner west, which I think some of the councillors here support, but it's hard to tell because there have been motions moved to have no all-weather surfaces in the inner west. It's a cork infill. It's cool, it's a much better technology, and it doesn't result in the surface heating up. The issue of maintenance has been raised. I think it's funny or interesting that people who've got no experience in the field believe that they are experts in horticulture. We have been spending more than ever before in the maintenance of our fields. The reason that the fields used to get brown in August and then they now get brown in June is because more kids are using them. It's not complicated. That's the reason. Doesn't matter what Garnet Brownbill from Mossman says. That's the reason. And in regards to the Greater Sydney Parklands Agency, look, I'll be really blunt here. It's a new quango set up by the former Liberal state government. I don't give a damn what bureaucrats in the Greater Sydney Parklands Agency say. Our job's to stand up for local families and to get the facilities that they need. And I've spoken, since you asked, I've spoken to Michael Rose, the chair of the Greater Sydney Parklands Agency. I've said the adopted position of this council is that we need these facilities, and we don't care what your bureaucrats say. We stand up for Balmain District Football Club and Leichhardt Saints, and we'll continue to do so. That's our job. So when people say, oh, what will the Heritage Council say? What will this agency say? Like, grow a backbone, stand up for the community.
Point of order, Mayor. That's
Withdrawn.
You've withdrawn a few things tonight. You're really on fine form on the last meeting of this term, aren't you?
Thank you. Stop interjecting. Withdrawn.
Stop interjecting. It's
Now-
rich coming from you today,
I'll
Mr. Mayor.
just note, Friends of Callan Park have been opposed to a number of things over the last decade and a half. And I'll call the meeting to order and ask you to desist from interjecting. We had enough of that at the last meeting, including from one of you. Councillor Stamlis and Friends of Callan Park and the Greens opposed the new fields at Balmain Road in Callan Park. I delivered them as Mayor. I'll ask you to desist from interjecting. I'll ask you to desist from interjecting. We had enough of that at the last meeting. I'll ask you to desist. I'll ask that the time be suspended. Come on. I don't want to use the procedures. Please desist from interjecting. You tell me when you've finished. Come on, Rosalind. We've known each other a long time. You don't have a right to interject. Please desist. You tell me when you've finished. Friends of Callan Park have opposed sporting fields within Callan Park. They opposed the upgrade. Okay, you tell me when you've finished. You're out of keeping with the code of meeting practice. You tell me when you're willing to stop. Have you finished? There are objections to the upgrade of Waterfront Drive, including one objection that we couldn't have lights there for nighttime training because it would inhibit the views of Callan Park from people on boats on the water. That's the reason that the light poles are coloured black. The Leichhardt Skate Park was delayed by more than a decade, and that included opposition from Councillor Stamlis. And now we've finally delivered, and you know what? It's going gangbusters. The kids love it. And this will be precisely the same. We need to deliver facilities for local children, even if Paul Greenland, the former convener of the New South Wales Greens, opposes it. He's not the proprietor of Callan Park. This is the same old story. The same old story, finding every different bureaucratic mechanism to oppose needed infrastructure for local families. I'll conclude my remarks there and I'll pose a question to Councillor Shetty. In 2022, when you were running for election as the state member for Balmain, you supported, in writing, perhaps through political expediency, an all-weather surface in the Rozelle Parklands, which wasn't delivered. Is it the case that you now oppose all-weather surfaces? And if not, why did you support it there but you don't support it in Callan Park?
The delivery of an all-weather field in a new sporting ground that is not taking away existing, much used, well-loved green space for a multitude of purposes is quite a different proposition to putting in 2 synthetic fields in a park that is used by a variety of different stakeholders, where it is much loved and appreciated, instead of actually just delivering a new synthetic field somewhere that has not been existing parkland, that was absolute wasteland prior to that being built. So I think there is a very clear difference between my support for a synthetic field in new Roselle Parklands before there was any green space there to offer, and what is being suggested by the council now to take a well-shared green space and take it for the use of one club without fully understanding the implications for the community and having a respectful dialogue about.
You understand that it's 2 clubs though, right? I presume
Apologies.
you misspoke.
The 2 clubs that I also speak with and have relationships with, and I just want to clarify, I'm not anti-sport or anti-children.
But there's 2.
Yeah, it's getting quite late. I obviously understand there's 2. My apologies for misspeaking.
No dramas. Thank you for clarifying your position, sort of. Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? No. Councillor, sorry. I've got Councillor Drury and then Councillor Stamoulis for a right of reply.
Look, as someone who's actually read the whole of the new South Wales Chief Scientist's report, I'd actually be interested in asking Professor Stevens a question. Not about the report, but about an interesting aspect in relation to subjective quoting from the report. And Professor Stevens, would you tend to mark someone down who cherry-picked parts of a report that supported their argument, but completely ignored the parts of the report that didn't support their argument? Would you tend to mark that sort of thing down? Would that kind of get you a worse
Point of
mark?
order, Mayor. What a ridiculous exercise.
Perfectly legitimate.
Gratefully, we're not at university.
Sorry, Councillor Shetty.
Ridiculous.
Sorry,
Absolutely
Councillor Shetty.
ridiculous.
With
Point
great
of order.
respect, that's not a point of order, and I defer to Councillor Stevens over yourself in regards to academic legitimacy.
We're not in academia, we are in
Ask
a
you to
council.
desist from interjecting.
Come on.
Councillor Drury is entitled to put a question to Councillor Stevens, and I don't believe that you can overrule him on academic grounds.
So I think I can provide a brief answer to this question. I've also read the report cover to cover, and I think it's important to note that when we're speaking about any playing ground, any playing field, we can't look at them in isolation, and that natural turf also involves an environmental impact. They are not pure as the driven snow. Natural turf requires fertiliser, can require pesticides, does involve runoff into waterways, requires ongoing maintenance. So it's really important that we acknowledge that playing fields are highly context specific, and indeed you quote correctly a bit of the report in the motion that acknowledges that, and that we ought to take a holistic approach, and there's nothing wrong with having a mix of natural and all-weather surfaces across the LGA so that we can ensure that kids and grown-ups get to play sport across the year. No one's proposing to put synthetic turf everywhere. It's a relatively small area, and I think it's perfectly supported. Perfectly well supported by the New South Wales Chief Scientist's report.
May I ask a question of Councillor Stevens?
Oh,
Is that the rule?
No, you definitely can. I just don't think it will end well for you.
Okay. Let me give it a roll of the dice. It's my last meeting anyway.
Good luck.
Like estimates.
What has a poorer environmental impact, a synthetic field or a natural playing field, noting that there's impacts to the environment on both?
You can't answer that question in the abstract, can you?
The report doesn't say.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll let Councillor Stevens answer the question.
I think it's important to look at the context in which it's situated.
So there would be circumstances
I'll ask
where
you to desist from interjecting. It's not a cross-examination. Councillor Stevens is entitled to answer
you did
your
start
question.
this farcical process where we're discussing it with one of the councillors.
This is the 5th or 6th time tonight that you have interjected. It's your last
out
council
with
meeting.
a bang, Philippa.
It's your last council meeting. let's end it on a good note. Please desist.
It's been
from
going
interjecting.
so well and so
It will
respectfully.
be the 7th time that you've interjected. Please desist. You've posed a question to Councillor Stevens. Allow him to answer it.
I don't think it's correct to say that in every circumstance, a synthetic or all-weather surface would always be worse than natural turf.
Thank you for that. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll go to Councillor Stamoulis for his scintillating right of reply.
Mr. Mayor, you're right. In fact, that particular BDFC membership has seen an influx of girls, 33%, I think, to about 37% over the last couple of years, which is a very strong rise. But their club membership is flatlining. Over the last 4 or 5 years, it's flatlined. I reckon it's going to be down about 3 to 5% within about the next 4 to 5 years. It'll be down 3 to 5%. All of the data that you well see in your municipality tells you that right now, doesn't it? That's what will happen, and in fact, it's probably happening right now. We are seeing a big fall in the 15 years and younger population of the inner west. A very, very big fall. In fact, we are now at 2022. We're at the lowest since 2009. The 0 to 14s, and they flow through and grow up. Don't forget. And in fact, I would say by about 26, 27, we'll be at the lowest in about a quarter of a century. Of 0 to 14s, the lowest in a quarter of a century. That's where we're heading. The data's quite clearly heading that way, in fact, that is dropping. And all of this is happening, this reduction in the number of youth and that, at a time when the Balmain ward in particular has just added a full-size field and a very large training field. So if anything, when you look at the data and when you look at the field capacity and intensity of use, you might be suggesting there probably isn't a great need for synthetic turf. But the numbers are showing that. There isn't a great need for synthetic turf, but there is a great need for council to maintain its fields in a much better state than we do right now. But have a quick look at that data of 0 to 14s and have a look at the club membership, which is flatlined over the last 4 or 5 years and will drop slightly over the next few years. Thanks.
Put the motion. All those in favour? 6 in favour. All those against? 8 against. That has been defeated. That is democracy. Yes, it is. That has been defeated. We'll move on to the next item, item 46, licence agreements in parks.
I move that, Mr. Mayor, and I'd just like to indicate that the Deputy Mayor and I have had some discussions and we have come to an agreement about some amendments to this motion, which will obviate the need to deal with item 49. I believe the minute takers have a revised version of the motion.
Can I just ask the Deputy Mayor if that's correct?
That is correct, and
Okay.
that's the motion, I believe.
Okay. Will you second that motion?
I will.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, the strikeouts make it a bit complicated. I think probably the easiest thing is if we could have a clean version of the motion that's proposed by Councillor Atkins and Councillor Smith on the screen. You wish
May I
to speak
speak
to
to
it?
it in the meantime?
Yes.
It basically amounts to a combination of the two motions with some slight changes to point 3. Camperdown Memorial Rest Park is a beloved park with users from across the LGA, and indeed parks in the inner west are precious because so many of us don't have space associated with our homes where we, our children and our dogs can run and be active or just be present in green space. They're also precious places where community can gather and connect. And Camperdown Memorial Rest Park is seen in, not just in Darman Ward, but across the LGA as one of those parks. It's unfortunate that the proposal has come to everyone's attention in the way that it has, but it's clear that residents and park users have significant concerns about losing a part of the park to commercial use, and that they should be able to have their say on it, and that it should come back to council with a recommendation. And residents and park users anywhere would share these concerns, so it's appropriate that council make it clear to residents that any time there is a proposal for a private business to take over public space, that the community will have their opportunity to have their say. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I am seconding this motion, obviously. I concur with Councillor Atkins that our parks and our green spaces in the inner west, and perhaps particularly in Stanmore Drummond Ward, are very precious to the local community because we don't have many of them. And I think particularly during COVID, we all realised just how critical our open green spaces are. So I completely understand the strong interest in the local community about how their parks and public spaces are used. I acknowledge the many community members who have sent feedback either by writing directly to their local ward councillors, by speaking at tonight's meeting, by attending last week's Local Matters Forum, or responding via the Your Say website on this issue. That is fundamental to what we do here on council when it comes to how we use our public spaces. The community should be engaged on that use. That's according to the community engagement strategy that we unanimously adopted in this term of council. And it's clear that there was a fundamental misstep in how this decision was reached. And I'm very pleased to see that thanks to the activism of the community and the actions of local ward councillors that we are now in the process of rectifying that. I will state, in the interests of honesty and transparency, I'm not outright opposed to the concept of cafes and kiosks utilising council-owned space, whether it be a public park or whether it be any council facility, to set up shop. I think there are examples where it has worked really well to enhance the local area. For example, Outfield Cafe in Yeo Park, or at the Splash Cafe, which opened late last year at Fanny Durack Aquatic Centre in Petersham Park. Both of those have been really well received by the local community, and I'm sure all local residents would agree that they are a huge positive benefit to the local area. But fundamentally, the community needs to be consulted, they need to be engaged, and I think that's often how we reach better outcomes, where we take the community's feedback with what is perhaps initially being proposed and come to a compromise agreement, and I'm hopeful that that's what can occur in this case. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor. I'm in support of the motion, and I thank Councillor Atkins and the Deputy Mayor for their collaboration and compromise. I just have a couple of thoughts. Look, I thought it was really disappointing to see Councillor Griffiths treading on Councillor Atkins' turf. This is a local Stanmore Ward issue, and I thought it was inappropriate to see an outgoing councillor using the last few weeks of his term to involve himself so heavily in a matter that was the responsibility of our local Stanmore Ward councillors. I've never seen before someone who'd served less than a single term on council and a shortened term getting relevance deprivation syndrome before they've finished that single term. At one point I thought we were stuck in a Simpsons episode. It was like seeing Grandpa Simpson yelling at the cloud, but the headline was, "Young man yells at cloud." And I think Councillor Griffiths could learn a lesson or two if he ever runs for council again about treating his colleagues and the community with respect and deference. Councillor Lockie.
Oh, I wouldn't want to speak for Councillor Atkins, but they're a tough person. I reckon they can get over the ignominy of having another councillor from their team working with them on an issue. Look, I just want to address, thank you to the Deputy Mayor and to Councillor Atkins for collaborating on the motion. I agree with all the comments you've made, and I do thank the residents for having raised this issue with us. I also do want to recognise it's, working at another council, it is really hard and quite embarrassing when you realise things have gone wrong. And I do want to recognise the efforts of staff who have stepped in to rectify this situation and to make sure that we have this avenue for doing the right thing and going back to the community. And I particularly want to recognise our Director of Planning, Simone Plummer, who worked really hard with all of us to get across the situation, make sure we were all fully briefed on the details, and to the General Manager, Peter Gainsford. I know we're not accustomed to the Stanmore Ward Local Matters Forum being tough ones. Like, we generally are pretty nice and friendly at that side of the Inner West Council, but that was a tough meeting in some respects, and I really appreciate it. I'm sure all the other councillors did as well. The fact that you took ownership of that in that public forum and apologised to the community and committed to following the proper process. Of course, we don't want things to go wrong, but, we're a big organisation staffed by very human Sometimes things do, but it is important to take ownership and rectify it as soon as we possibly can, and I think that's what happened here.
Is there anyone in opposition to the motion or who wishes to amend it? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. The last remaining item needs to be dealt with in confidential session, unless I've got that wrong. Would someone move that procedural motion?
Could I please just, with the indulgence of the council, just make a quick comment?
Of course.
Yep. Just really wanted to acknowledge Councillor Zoe Sardulius. As she has indicated, she is not going to run again in this council election. And I think we are all the poorer for that decision. I've known Zoe for a very long time when we both worked at neighbouring electorate offices, and we would often call each other to offer help, to offer support, to give each other warnings of people we had sent across the river to speak to the respective bosses. We developed a real collaboration during that period. And when it came time to run, it was very clear to me that to have someone of Zoe's calibre running as a candidate would just be an extraordinary opportunity. She has deep, deep connections to Marrickville, Tempe, Sydenham and St Peters. And I think it's fair to say that Zoe had some trepidation about running, because I don't think that Zoe is someone who naturally seeks the limelight. I don't think that Zoe seeks recognition or validation in any way. Zoe is someone who does the work quietly, diligently, and with a real sense of passion, principle and purpose. Zoe is someone who wants to make a difference for the community, and she knows that starts by making a difference for people, individual people. And over the last couple of years, as a councillor, I have learned so much from Zoe about patience and about really what it is that we're here for. It's not actually about politics, it's about people. And I'm so proud of everything that Zoe has achieved. You might not be able to count that in motions or, you know, speeches made in public forums or any of those things, but you can count that through the people whose lives she's made a real difference for. And I'm just so incredibly proud of her. I promised Zoe that she would not get elected when we ran. Oops, and Zoe did. And look, there's been some commentary around that, and I think that we all really need to reflect on the fact that we're all people, that criticism that is undue and unwarranted can have a real impact on people. And I have seen Zoe, again, overcome a lot of upset about some of those things that happened, to rise above and to be, in my mind, just the stellar example of what a good councillor is. Someone who's there for people, who will work day and night and who will not seek the limelight or that validation. Part of Zoe's deep connection to Marrickville is that she was a local business owner in Marrickville. She has lived in and around Marrickville for most of her adult life, and her husband was a councillor also. And to see Zoe continue Emmanuel's term that was tragically cut short, I think he would just be so proud. To see her be the mother she is to her boys, just incredible person. And I'm really, really proud of the fact that Zoe has shown that doesn't matter what your life circumstance is, you can be a single mum raising 2 boys with health needs. You can represent your community, and you can be the most exemplar councillor that we have. And I just have so much respect and love for you, and I'm so grateful. And we're going to miss you deeply, but you will always be, for me, the shining light of what a councillor can be, and I will be, if I'm elected again, inspiring to continue your legacy in the next term. So thank you.
For that, Councillor Howard. Can I get a procedural motion to move into closed council? Moved by Councillor Drury, seconded by Councillor Scott. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. I'll ask the council officers to let us know when the broadcast has been discontinued. Okay, the broadcast has recommenced. We've completed the one item dealt with in confidential session. Before we conclude the meeting, there is the urgency motion that has been flagged by Councillor Howard at the beginning of the meeting. And so I'll now go to him. Councillor Howard, I'll remind you that you're required in the first instance to explain why the matter should be dealt with urgently. Then I'm required as chair to rule on whether it is urgent. The council is required to vote on whether it is urgent before we debate the substance of the motion.
Thank you. So I am declaring this or requesting that this be considered urgently, given two main factors. One, it is the final council meeting of the term. And secondly, we understand that the Commonwealth Government is currently in the process of testing a question on diverse sexuality for inclusion in the 2026 census. And so it is not clear to me the timeline of that, but I understand that that could be quite a quick process around determining the language around that. So I seek it be considered urgently.
I think it's clear that that is urgent, so I will rule that the matter is urgent, and Councillor Howard will move that the matter be dealt with urgently, seconded by Councillor D'Arienzo. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against that? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Councillor Howard, I'll ask you to speak to the substance of the motion.
Thank you. So I read the motion earlier and it has been displayed now for the benefit of councillors. So, and thank you, councillors and mayor, for allowing this to be considered. As policymakers and elected representatives, we rely on accurate and detailed data to make decisions that shape our communities. Data collected through the Australian Census is a critical measure of our demographics, our needs, and the character of our country. Like many, I was dismayed that questions about diverse sexuality, gender identity, and variations of sex characteristics were not going to be included in the 2026 Australian Census. Including these questions would provide an accurate picture of how many LGBTQIA+ people live in our community, their specific needs, what services might help to address their specific needs, and to paint a broader picture of what LGBTQIA+ life looks like in the year 2026 in Australia. That's information we need to know if we're going to understand the unique challenges LGBTQIA+ people face, and to respond meaningfully to address disadvantage, marginalisation, and discrimination. Counting LGBTQIA+ people in the census is Labor Party policy, in no small part due to the advocacy and hard work of LGBTQIA+ advocates, activists, and organisations in the broader community, but thanks also to the persistence of LGBTQIA+ people within the Labor Party, namely through Rainbow Labor. For years, Rainbow Labor has campaigned for inclusion in the census. That's years of conversations, meetings, organising, advocacy, and yes, sometimes disappointment. We've always seen it as our role to echo, advocate, and bolster the views of LGBTQIA+ people and organisations within the governments that our party forms. And I'm so proud of their advocacy again this past week. Could I seek a brief extension, please?
Councillor D'Arienzo will move an extension of time of 2 minutes, seconded by Councillor Stevens. All those in favour, against, declare that carried.
Thank you. One of the tools we've had at our disposal has been participation in Mardi Gras, an opportunity for Rainbow Labor members to express our values, ideals, and to showcase the work we've done to give our community a voice in our parliaments and council chambers, either through our queer MPs and representatives themselves, or through elected representatives who are allies marching alongside us. And I offer some criticism for Councillor Atkins in one respect. And I offer it with respect because we've worked together really collaboratively over this term. I'm disappointed and really frankly appalled at some of the comments that I saw on Facebook from you this week, that unless we agreed with an urgency motion that you were to move or a mayoral minute, that we should not be wearing purple, and we're at Purple Day, that we should not be allowed to march in Mardi Gras. Look, as a proud member of the LGBTQIA+ community, I'll say I will march in Mardi Gras, whether you like it or not. Mardi Gras is for everybody. The Greens don't own it as a party. We all get to march. I understand the anger and frustration from the past week around the question of how LGBTQIA+ people will be included in the census. I feel it really deeply too, really deeply. And I understand the rightful demands that questions about the inclusion of gender identity and variation of sex characteristics in the census must also occur. It must also be included. Inclusion has to be for all of us in the LGBTQIA+ community, and we must all be counted. I thank the many organisations who are continuing to call for inclusion of transgender, diverse and intersex Australians in the census. I will continue to shape my own anger and frustration into meaningful action. I will continue to seek to persuade, to build consensus, to reach coalition support across the political spectrum beyond lines of who agrees with me or not. I'll be inclusive because I truly believe that's how we make change. I urge councillors to support this urgency motion.
Hear, hear. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor D'Arienzo, do you wish to speak to it? That's waived. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion or to amend it?
I don't wish to speak against it, obviously. I would like just to answer your point. In hindsight, I would say that I should probably have expressed that a bit better, that it should not have been about supporting my motion or doing the thing that I wanted, but supporting what you have put forward in general. I don't believe that you would have not supported including gender and variations of sex characteristics in the census. So I apologise for the way that I put that. I agree the way forward is through inclusivity, but it's certainly not through transphobia, and I will quite happily repeat my anger and disappointment in the Prime Minister and some of the other ministers for the reasons they expressed for not including this. I too value the work that we've done together. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried unanimously. I declare the meeting and this term of council closed.